On a silent night, a lonely boy stands beneath a street lamp, his face filled with melancholy. Someone nearby watches the starry sky and then turns their attention to the boy. At that moment, the night is so silent that nothing can be heard, just like the night the world was created. The man approaches the boy, and with a somber look, the boy appears hopeless, while the man's face is golden and bright. The street lamp illuminates their surroundings. The blonde man then calls the boy's attention, asking if the world's difficulties have made him fall. With an empty gaze, the boy stares at him, and the man tells him something cool, asking him to keep it close to his heart. With a smiling face, the man says that all the stars are shining for the boy and that one day, when they are both stronger, they will meet again. Meanwhile, somewhere else, people are training boxing. A white-haired boy is in the ring, landing a straight punch on his opponent's face. The crowd is impressed as someone begins talking about a person near the master, continuing to say that they heard this man is traveling the world looking for a good fighter, but never thought he would come to this gym. He is a legendary trainer who has raised 5 world champions and is known as K. A man turns his attention elsewhere and shouts at a kid to stop listening to the conversation and get back to training. Back to the fight, the guy in red tries to hit the white-haired boy, but he dodges. When he attempts a cross-punch, the boy dodges again, looking seriously at his opponent. Taking advantage of the opening, he lands a small jab to knock him out. K immediately focuses on this movement. The guy in red is already falling unconscious to the ground. A man beside K asks what he thinks of Beck. He seems to be mocking his opponent, whom he just defeated. His adversary quickly gets up and tries to throw a cross-punch, but his punch is easily blocked. In disbelief, the guy cannot believe it, and Beck hits him on the jaw again. In his mind, the old man thinks this boy is just playing around, so it's impossible to measure his ability, saying he wants to see Beck fight the strongest guy in the gym next. The other man doesn't seem to understand very well. We see a huge guy getting ready in another area. Someone arrives, calling for Chiel and saying the master is looking for him. The master tells the trainer that the big guy is ranked 3rd in the middleweight category, so maybe Beck won't win because of the weight difference. Beck continues smiling and looks over the ropes. Chiel arrives and asks if the master is looking for him, then suddenly gets surprised because the legendary K is present. His master talks to him about the situation. Chiel observes the boy, and at one point Beck and Chiel face each other. The man tells Chiel to take it easy as a precaution. He agrees not to go all out. Stretching, the boy doesn't appear nervous. The trainer just watches the white-haired boy's attitude. Chiel asks the kid if he won't use any protective gear. Beck says if he uses it, it will mess up his hair, and besides, he likes the thrill that comes with it. Chiel says he will fix the boy's arrogant hairstyle, and Beck says he is looking forward to it. They then tap gloves while the rest watch the boy's taunts. Chiel looks displeased. The trainer is very serious. We see Beck without any guard, just swaying in front of Chiel. Everyone asks what the hell he is doing. The master thinks the boy is showing his true form and face, recalling that when he first met him, he would never forget what he saw, especially those movements he had never seen before. Beck asks if those are all the punch styles Chiel has. Angrily, Chiel tries his luck with a right cross. The boy, with an unconventional style that could even be considered genius, punches the guy in the nose. The spectators are amazed, saying it's incredible. In his mind, the trainer says the boy found an opening in the cross-punch, which is not bad for an amateur, but he knows there's a vast barrier between a professional and an amateur, something no one can easily break. Quickly, Chiel tries to hit the boy, but he dodges the punch. Chiel prepares another punch and advances. Beck looks shocked as he sees the punch approaching, and his arms are raised by the bald guy. But when Beck was about to be hit, he surprisingly dodged, moving to the side and avoiding another attack coming his way. Everyone was shocked by his agility. The coach remained serious, just observing the fight. They wondered what had happened. Among everyone, the happiest was their master. Beck remarked that Chiel was quite resilient to withstand that blow, while Chiel expressed his amazement at the boy's skill. Beck thanked the compliment of the small bow. In his mind, Chiel thought that Beck wasn't a beginner, but still more abnormal than other people, and he added that he couldn't disappoint Coach K, charging at the boy with full force. Chiel prepared a powerful attack. By taking a step back, the boy managed to escape that monstrous strike, but the big guy didn't leave him any breathing room. Yet again, Beck dodged. He pretended to throw a long punch, causing Chiel to lower his guard slightly for a counterattack, but the boy only feigned, landing an uppercut on Chiel's chin. Chiel was incredulous, struck by the blow, while the audience couldn't believe what they were seeing. The big guy had no idea how he was hit by an uppercut. His master thought it was incredible. Enraged, Chiel tried to retaliate, but his blows couldn't reach back. All his attempts seemed to fail, and the boy managed to strike him again. Chiel admitted he couldn't keep up, seeing the boy move incredibly fast, appearing suddenly in front of him with amazing angles and timing. Furious, Chiel wondered who this boy was. In his subconscious, the coach talked about the boy's flexibility, adding that his elasticity allowed for various unrestrained attacks. A punch that started as an uppercut changed suddenly to an overhand. This was incredible because changing the attack midway usually disperses the force, rendering the move useless. But unlike an amateur, the boy completed his strike professionally. A boxer was never trained to handle someone like him. Bak's style was simply free, and his way of dodging was carefree with sudden and irregular attacks. The old man thought it had been a long time since he saw a style like this. While Chul looked at the boy, Bake stood facing him. The coach remarked that this was a talent granted by the gods, but noted that Bake still lacked something: experience. Surprised, the boy said he felt cornered. A cloth ended up covering his eyes on the ground. The master arrived, saying he had asked Chul to go easy. In his mind, Chul declared that if this weren't in a ring, the result might have been different. Coach K seemed to be pondering something. Everyone left, saying they didn't imagine Bake would be that good. Soon, the master asked the coach what he thought of the boy. Clearly, the coach said that Bake had the potential to be a legendary boxer, an innate talent, good physical strength, and a great athletic sense. But some of his moves were visibly flashy yet inefficient. In his thoughts, the coach mentioned there were some places to visit, but after witnessing this spectacle, there might be no need. They heard a noise from outside the window, seeing bullies apparently intimidating someone. The master was about to say something, but the coach stopped him, telling him to wait. They saw the protagonist being held by the collar without showing any emotion. A punch flew towards his face, but he still showed no expression, his gaze appearing lonely. Kei was somehow confused, feeling a kind of shock in his mind. Despite being hurt, the protagonist didn't seem to care. Paying closer attention to the boy's face, Kei seemed to recognize him, but still there was no emotion on the boy's face. The old man told the master he was going down and then went down, telling them to stop what they were doing. The master quickly ordered the bullies to get up. However, the coach continued to observe the protagonist who turned to leave. The coach questioned why he didn't even try to dodge. They just stared at each other in silence. To him, the boy could have easily dodged those worthless attacks. The boy remained silent. In his mind, Kei said that if his hunch was correct, not even a professional could touch the boy. Seeing the old man, the protagonist said he didn't care about the aggression. He fell silent, incredulous at what he had heard, bowed to leave the place, and the coach just watched him. A guy on the ground says that the boy deserved it because he shows no respect to veterans. Soon, the master asks what they know about respect, but the old man keeps watching the protagonist walk away. Kei says he will trust his intuition, but if he is wrong, something serious could happen. But he says he has always lived like this, then starts walking forward. The old man calls the protagonist's attention, so the young man turns around. We see the trainer going all out to hit the boy's head. He sees the fist coming his way and easily dodges it. The master asks what the trainer is doing, and the trainer directly asks if the boy wants to learn boxing. The boy, with an empty look, asks if it would be fun, if hitting people is fun. Kei looks at the protagonist and thinks that he doesn't have it. The boy has no desire for fame, money, power, domination, or any longing for superiority. The boy is certainly different from what he saw today because he either grew up rich and spoiled or in the worst conditions. Answering the protagonist's question, Kei asks if it's not obvious. Looking at the guys on the ground, the trainer says that those people have no guilt for hitting him and confirms that hitting other people is very fun. Humans are weak creatures longing for meaning in their lives, so there's nothing fairer than using fists. Just like in nature, brute force is the easiest way to prove your dominance. People are fanatical about the thrill of seeing a show of strength. Shouting, the old man says that the protagonist is also human, so he must strive as hard as he can. Saying that he must spread his wings and fly until the sun burns them, destroy his enemies, that's what it means to be alive. The trainer asks the boy to watch him. Then the old man assumes his stance, soon the man prepares, and then begins to demonstrate some punches, a sequence of punches. The trainer says this sequence is called 1-2, suddenly saying that the protagonist has 1 month, that's the time he will stay at the gym, and to come see him when he is ready. The master observes what just happened. On another day at school, we see some students talking and just being students. Our boy is sitting at the back looking out the window. Some boys insult a blonde kid, stealing a large amount of money from the young boy. The young boy named Jay seemed to be enduring something until Bak tells him to lean a little more, a rather deplorable situation. But Bak talks normally with the boys about going out and ends up saying that he has boxing classes so he can't go. The boy continues to endure the wait. Bak smiles, hearing his friends talk about him being the future boxing champion. In this world, there are 2 types of people, the weak and the strong. The same guy from before arrives and slaps the protagonist, saying that he got them into trouble. He goes towards Jay, saying that it's already recess, and asks him to come along. During recess in another place, Bake is eating instant noodles along with the other boys. The bully says there's nothing better than a cup during lunch and asks if Jay agrees. He says yes. Bake questions if he likes it so much, why hasn't he eaten anything yet? Jay is trembling with a caterpillar in his bowl. The bully says there aren't enough ingredients, then stands up and spits in the boy's bowl. Bake takes the guy's lollipop, saying it will give extra flavor. Everyone starts to mock the boy. Jay is almost crying. Bake asks if it's still not seasoned. The boy says nothing and continues to eat. They laugh at the situation and Jay goes to the sink to vomit. He leans against the drinking fountain. Later, the boys are playing soccer. Our protagonist and Jay just watch. Buck controls the ball and kicks it towards the goal. Both seem completely desolate. Jay asks you why he is not playing. The boy says it's not fun. Jay agrees, smiling. The boy asks the protagonist if he has something he likes. He thinks for a moment and says he has never thought about it. The image of the trainer reflects in his mind, and he wonders if he is not human. You ask Jay if he has something he wants to do in the future. He says he wants to be like his father. Jay says he bought a new game and asks you if he wants to come to his house to try it out. They keep talking and Beck notices this. Jay tells the protagonist that he always wanted to get to know him better. Suddenly, Beck kicks the ball towards the boy. Yu easily catches the ball. Beck watches the situation. Jay is astonished by this. We see that Beck is furious about it, so he walks towards them. Looking at the protagonist, the boy slaps him, pulling his hair, and says it was just a joke and asks if he can't take a joke, adding that if Yu gets in his way again, he will be dead. The protagonist has no reaction, while the boy is trembling with fear. Later, after the bell rings, Jay tells Yu that he will go ahead because he has something to do at home. Alone, the protagonist just watches. In another place, someone is training, throwing the equipment on the ground. We see someone teaching Jay when he was little how to do a jab. The boy grits his teeth and keeps punching the air, saying he has to be brave, but all he did was stand there trembling. He calls himself a loser. Sitting down, the boy says he needs to pull himself together and face the enemy head-on, but he is afraid of facing back. He says that since he was a kid, he has watched boxing, so he already knows who is weak and who is strong. He then squeezes his arm. The boy says back strength is certainly not normal, besides the weight difference. The guy was at the level of a professional athlete, but Bake was smiling while beating him. An ordinary person can't do anything in front of absolute talent. Later, when night falls, someone opens a door. Jay just watches the person enter. Getting up, the boy greets his father. He is surprised that his son is still awake. Jay asks his father about when he was a boxer and faced a stronger opponent, what he did. His father looks at him in silence and says that he was a professional boxer, so he always did his best. Slightly disheartened, Jay agrees with his father. His father gets up and says that he rarely encountered someone terribly strong. When that happened, he would tremble and everything he learned became useless. Instinctively, he would throw random punches, hoping his opponent would knock him out, and when he fell to the ground, he would say that finally that hell was over. But even after kneeling to the opponent, he knew he could still get up, and that is what a true boxer does. Jay's eyes shine with admiration. His father says that this only applies to a boxer. In real life, if you meet someone stronger, you should run as fast as possible. That is true courage. Both the courage of an ordinary person and that of a boxer should not be underestimated. Jay thanks him and says he will go up to his room. The boy sleeps thinking about what his father said. In another place, still at night, our protagonist is walking. School that ended 4 hours ago. Beck says he is late and adds that he was waiting for him, also mentioning that their teacher kindly provided Yu's address. The protagonist walks past him, but Bake asks where he is going and then kicks him, making him lose his balance. Yu falls to the ground. Bake pulls his hair and asks if he knows how to punch because earlier, you seem to have good reflexes. Bake gets even more serious and makes the protagonist get to know the asphalt more closely, saying he seemed like a ghost for having no reaction. Even after this, Yu still has no reaction. Beck says that from now on, the protagonist's life will become a nightmare and adds that tomorrow he should bring 150 in cash, spitting on the young man's face. Leaving, he says the protagonist is a loser. Our boy is left alone in the dark. Buck walks back home. Suddenly, he feels something strange and becomes alert. Looking ahead, he sees several people. A bald guy with a scar on his mouth asks if the kid is Bakrio. He answers yes with a smile. Then the bald guy says he is here to find out if he is really that strong. The boy takes a few steps forward and punches the guy, who falls back immediately. Beck gives a sinister smile, making the others scared. A little later, the others are already finished. Beck looks and grabs the little guy, who apparently is scared. The boy says that's the expression he wants to see on him. Even apologizing, screams are heard around the moon. Everyone is down on the ground, while the victor is back. At the protagonist's house, he is holding a cat in his lap. While staring into nothingness, the next day we see Jay washing his face. He seems quite cheerful. The boy eats his breakfast and says he will eat a bit more today. Then he puts on his clothes and says that from this moment, a new version of him will emerge. Later at school, as usual, the boy stays in his corner. The bullies arrive, and one of them says he feels great after beating up a kid. Jay tells himself not to be afraid. They pass by him and do nothing. The boy doesn't understand why they did nothing to him, but on second thought, Yu was a bit late. The class ends and everyone is talking normally. Jay wonders why he wasn't bullied, remembering what the bullies said when they arrived. He asks if that's possible. Meanwhile, in another part of the school, the bullies are beating up the protagonist because he didn't bring the money. A bald guy tells him to get up because it's not over yet. Adjusting his stance, the guy punches our boy. After a while, he asks Bak if his stance is correct. Bak says he needs to rotate his hips more. Suddenly, Jay arrives, asking them to stop. Everyone looks surprised by his action, while Jay can't believe he actually said that. The hooded guy asks what the hell the boy is doing, and the young man starts trembling. Jay is overcome with fear, wondering why he did that. Beck watches him, and then the boy says he can't back down now. The bully says Jay is trembling, but the boy says he can do this. He assumes his fighting stance. Beck laughs psychotically, while Yu watches from the ground. In his thoughts, Jay says he must stay focused. The bald guy approaches, saying they must have gone too easy on him before since he is standing up wanting to fight. Jay rotates his body and then throws a jab at the guy's face. The bald guy is quite surprised. Rotating his hips and putting his body forward, Jay throws a straight punch. All the bullies around are impressed. The bald guy stumbles to the side. The young man stays alert, having landed his first punch on the bully. The others ask what the boy is doing. In his hand, the bald guy sees ketchup and gets furious. Jay closes his guard, saying his punches are having an effect. The bald guy hesitates to advance. Jay looks at him, thinking to himself not to be afraid. The bully trembles. Beck arrives, telling the bald guy to back off unless he wants to become a basketball. Beck asks if the boy has learned boxing. As the boy approaches, Jay waits for the right moment. The guy next to him says the boy skipped the easiest level and went straight to the final boss. Getting closer, Beck smiles and says he will see what Jay is made of. The two stare at each other, and Jay says he can't win if he fights fairly. Beck jokes, saying he is right in front of him and asks if Jay will hit him. The boy says if there's a chance, he will take it. Jay manages to throw a punch, but Beck easily dodges. The boy tries to corner Bach with aggressive punches, but he dodges them all. Jay says that if he can land just one punch on Beck when his guard is down, he might have a chance. While the two fight, the bullies are surprised. Jay says he just needs to land one punch, just one, but in all his attempts, Beck dodges. The boy is already running out of breath. Beck says if Jay swings his arms like that, he is bound to get tired, so every punch needs to be precise and bold like the one he just landed. In his mind, the boy says the first strike is crucial. It determines the advantage between you and your opponent. Beck asks what is wrong because Jay froze. Staring closer at him, Beck says he knows the boy is scared. Jay screams, throwing a punch, but the boy just sidesteps and delivers a terrible critical hit. Jay falls to the ground. Beck calls for his attention. The boy says that Beck is a monster, on a completely different level from him. Beck says he went easy on him and asks the boy to stop being a coward. On the ground, Jay is trembling with fear and exhaustion. He doesn't know what to do and wonders if there is a plan B. He says he is screwed, and for a moment, his mind goes blank. The coated guy says he knew the boy had no chance. Beck asks if Jay is giving up. The boy realizes something. The image of his father in the ring comes to his mind, then he stands up. Beck says it wouldn't be fun if it ended so soon. Jay sighs determined and says that for now he will raise his guard to block Beck's attacks. If he can hold on, eventually the kid will get tired. Beck says he likes that look in the boy's eyes. Then the kid says he will start the second round. He puts his hand behind his back. Jay feels uneasy, while the kid says the fight will start now. The boy says that one arm will make it easier to block him. Beck asks if Jay won't do anything. Suddenly, the boy takes a punch and is surprised, but says he can't let his punches go through, so he must focus on his stance. The kid says that's not bad. He rotates his foot, launching several blows. Jay tries to endure. He has to endure because he's used to getting beaten up. Beck smiles and then punches the boy in the stomach, making him step back a bit. Beck says this feeling is great. Jay says the kid focus his attacks on his face to distract him, then hit him in the stomach. To prevent this from happening again, he needs to block him completely. Beck says the boy is thinking of covering all sides and wonders if he should play a bit more. The kid throws a quick punch and then sends another sliding sequence to the side. Beck hits the boy in the ribs but quickly moves to another attack. Jay says he needs to endure this. The orange-haired guy says that in the end the boy is getting beaten up. Jay says if he can hold on, eventually an opening will appear. The boy notices Beck's foot stop moving and realizes he is preparing a knockout blow. The movement is too long, so it's now or never. He will gather all his strength to land this punch, so he only needs this chance. Surprisingly, Beck just dodges and launches a crushing counterattack. In a flashback with a total of 13 wins, 12 losses, and 2 draws, Jay says probably no one remembers his father as a strong boxer, but no one thinks he is weak either. His father was a courageous boxer, which is why Jay always admired him. His father is working at a construction site, looking at the horizon, remembering his happy son, subconsciously wishing his son good luck. Beaten on the ground, the guy asks if they saw that, and the other questions if Jay is not dead. Beck watches the boy on the ground. He wonders why he is dizzy, while the world is moving. He wonders where the ground is because he needs to get up. Jay says he needs to resist. Beck says if he stays firm, he will surely get tired and then have another chance. But at this moment, he hits him again with all he has and questions if that was the plan, laughing and saying it's too obvious. At this moment, Jay doesn't know what to do, but he says it's not over yet, so he needs to pull himself together. He says he can still move. He tries to punch Beck again, but Beck dodges and counterattacks with a blow to his face. The boy doesn't know what to do. Beck seems to enjoy this. Immediately after, he slaps the boy in the face. At this moment, Jay is incredulous. The kid slaps him again and again and again. Beck hits him. Jay lies on the ground, breathless and without any strength. Beck says in the end, the boy only knows 1 or 2 things about boxing. Jay remembers his father's words, saying that even if he is on his knees, he can still get up. Beck says this was very fun, and from now on, he won't bother him anymore, so he should stay in line. He stands up trembling. The boy asks Bak to wait, while his father's words resonate, saying that a true boxer doesn't give up. Jay tells the kid it's not over yet. Bak glances back. The orange-haired guy says the boy has courage, while the hooded guy says if he keeps this up, he will end up dead. You does nothing. Bak looks back with great anger. Jay sees a punch coming, but unfortunately, it was impossible to dodge. He is practically unconscious. Bak grabs the boy and starts beating him. The bald guy asks what will happen if the boy dies, and the other says he asked for it. Bak asks if he hadn't warned Jay to stay in line. People like him should be beaten until they learn their place, and questions if Jay really thought he could fight, asking if he thought learning boxing would let him defeat him. No matter how much Jay tried, he would never beat him. The boy says he never tried to win. Bak doesn't understand what Jay is talking about. He continues asking if Bak doesn't get it. Jay says he's not the same as before, so he has already won. Besides, he doesn't care about being the best in the region. Bak is speechless. Jay shouts that he will become a great boxer. The kid gets furious again and starts punching Jay. As he punches, he asks if Jay still thinks this is for wimps. In the background, someone asks if this is fun. Everyone watches. We see the protagonist standing. He asks if punching people is fun. Elsewhere, the master asks what the trainer was doing with the boy earlier. He asks the master what he thinks about trusting his instincts. The master doesn't know what to say. Kei says that when he looked at each athlete he trained, he had a specific feeling about them, a feeling that they would conquer the boxing world. He felt the same way about Bak. But that boy is a completely different animal, an unknown feeling. The master asks what kind of unknown feeling the trainer is talking about. We see the protagonist standing. The bald guy asks if today is some special day for crazy people. Approaching Yu, he tries to say something, but takes a devastating punch and several more in succession. The trainer says he felt chills, a fear that made him tremble. No one understands anything. Bak looks back while the protagonist shows no reaction. The hooded guy sees and tries to run to attack Yu, but the protagonist easily punches him, instantly knocking him out. The orange-haired guy gets scared and runs away. Bak is confused. The master questions, and the trainer asks if he hadn't felt it when he first saw him, that expression, his look. He seemed bored while those fists hit him. The master seems not to understand the situation. Yu stands vaguely looking at Bak. The master asks if it's possible to be bored while being beaten. Smiling, the trainer says it's impossible. He threw a punch intending to take his life, but he dodged it easily. The master is surprised. Then the trainer explains that an ordinary person's speed can't keep up with a boxer's. That's why boxers train for years, but that guy was able to see his fist coming, moving with precision and grace, almost as if he had planned it. Then he asks if the master knows what that means. The trainer says he has met many geniuses, but never saw a child like that. But can you stare at each other? Bak wonders what this tension is and why the hell the boy is looking at him like that, approaching him while threatening. But in a brief moment, his face was reduced to nothing. The trainer says that it's not just reaction speed. While Bak screams, the trainer says that time flows differently for Yu. The boy asks if his eye is still intact. It continues, saying that the boy is not a genius, but of a completely different breed. Bak is terrified. While the trainer says that the boy is not human, but a monster, going back to Bak's past, everything started with a simple why. Why doesn't he dodge? Why doesn't he punch harder? It didn't take long for Bak to find that answer. A guy bumps into him. He gets annoyed serious. Bak just stares at him. Shortly after, the guy is on the ground. Bak says others are weak and he is strong, adding that the feeling of being superior is good. Since that day, he started fighting. Bak asked others to idolize him more, to fear him more, much more. Before he realized it, his fame spread. People came to fight him, thinking they would defeat him. His heart raced every time he found an opponent. Along with the pleasure of winning and defeating everyone, Bak realized something: how strong he is and how weak they are. This way of thinking took him to the top. Bak felt chosen, but now he is scared of a simple jab. He wonders if it's really possible to throw a punch like that. Bak says it's impossible because he is the chosen one. Even the trainer recognized him as a genius. Standing up, Bak says he made an embarrassing mistake, and that punch must be pure coincidence. At this moment, Bak gets angry, then goes after the protagonist. Bak says now he will give 100%. Yu just watches. The boy wonders how he will hit the boy while moving fast. Bak says he will put all his strength into this punch and beat him until he bleeds. The boy prepares for the attack. Yu assumes his stance. Bak thinks the protagonist will dodge, then breaks Yu's guard, saying that this is the difference of a talent chosen by the gods. But with some ease, the protagonist dodges. Bak is astonished by this. Yu comes from below and punches Bak, almost knocking him out with this blow. Yu follows up with another punch, hitting him brutally. Bak is in disbelief. With several blows, Bak passes out. The boy wakes up asking where he is because he can't see anything. He asks where Yu is. Bak feels something scary. Turning around, Bak sees his talent has become insignificant. Looking at it, he is frightened. He is panting, but a few minutes later, Bak Ryu understands. No part of his body is intact. He can't even move a finger. This is a feeling Bak had never experienced before. Then Bak realizes that this feeling is the bitter taste of failure. He cries. A 17-year-old teenager, this unhappy and weak person, cried like a 5-year-old child. Later, in another place at the gym, two people observe the trainer while the guy in yellow says he thought the old man would recruit Bake. The guy with the pompadour asks if they can't take advantage since the great trainer K is here. Approaching, the two ask if the trainer could give them some tips, but he says he is not interested in small fry. The guys walk away desolate. K falls into deep thought. He says he wants the protagonist. Never in his life has he wanted someone so much, and he will have him even if he has to kidnap him. The master mentions something about Bake not having arrived for training yet. The door opens. The master says Bake took too long, and we see that it was our protagonist who arrived. Everyone watches him. K asks if he wants to learn boxing, and the protagonist says yes. The trainer says he will make him a professional boxer. Yu says he has a condition. Our boy's hand is all injured. K notices this. Yu says he needs money to pay the hospital bill. The trainer realizes what happened and asks if Bake was a formidable opponent. Yu honestly says he is weak. The master is incredulous. K asks if he really only needed the money for the hospital bills. The old man says he would buy the entire hospital if necessary. Then the trainer tells Yu to show him the way to the hospital. Leaving, K says he owes one to the master. At the hospital, we see Bake in bed. K says Bake was definitely beaten. Probably after this incident, his ego was quite hurt, but that's not his concern. Jay is also in the hospital. Yu watches him while remembering the boy shouting, which makes him smile. The trainer asks if Yu is ready. He says yes. Arriving at the boy's house, K asks if that is where Yu lives because it is empty. The trainer asks if the boy had parents. He says no. K says he will return in a week with all the paperwork. The trainer asks the boy's name. In a flashback of a woman, for a brief moment, she says Yu. His cat approaches. Then the protagonist responds that his name is Yu. K says that from today, Yu will receive a new life. He will introduce him to a whole new world. Destiny leads each person to a predestined path, just like some who achieve greatness without much effort, while others are left behind. In this impetuous and rational race of life and destiny, only the will of the brave will remain, and they will be the only ones to march with their heads held high. The trainer asks if Yu is ready. Holding the cat, Yu says yes. He looks at the protagonist, thinking that something doesn't seem right. The trainer puts gel on his hand, smooths Yu's hair, and says that the protagonist's appearance is much better. A while later, the two arrive at the airport. The cat is a bit tired from the trip. K sees the people who took care of the luggage. The woman welcomes them, and K asks if things are going well while he was away. The butler says he will take the protagonist's luggage, but Yu says it's not necessary. The girl observes our boy and introduces herself, saying her name is Carmen and she is the gym manager. Carmen says there is a car waiting for them. Arriving at the destination, they get out of the car. The protagonist looks around. The girl says this is the house where Yu will stay. She says the protagonist didn't want a big house, so she made an effort to find a smaller one and adds that if he needs anything, he should just call her. The trainer says the protagonist doesn't have much luggage, so they will go straight to the gym. K says this is his gym and it is called Lions Boxing Club. When the trainer arrives, everyone watches. The manager says this gym can be considered the largest in the country with many benefits. Carmen continues to talk about the gym. The people look at the protagonist, impressed by his newness. A boy also watches him. Carmen says most of the boxers in the gym are professionals, but few are trained by the trainer. Our boy says he understands. The girl gets angry, saying these geniuses always have the same attitude. Kay introduces Yu to another trainer named Arnaud and adds that soon they will give the protagonist a tour and get accustomed. The trainer notices Yu looking at another corner. Kay says those posters are world champions he trained himself. They are so worthy that their names mark the boxing world. The one on the right is his best masterpiece, but at this moment he is already at another gym. Kay tells Carmen to prepare 2 heavyweight slots tomorrow for Yu. She agrees. The trainer silently asks Yu to watch closely to realize that there are also monsters like him. In a championship, people are screaming. From above, the trainer and Yu observe a fight happening below. The guy in the ring looks scared. We see a monster directing a blow at him, followed by several punches. The world champion's fierce attacks continue. The other guy is struggling, his arms are being crushed. In the end, he is knocked out. The fight is over. The challenger is being taken away on a stretcher. Everyone asks if there is anyone who can take the belt from the invincible champion. The trainer laughs, saying the guy has the same destructive power as always, and then asks you to listen to those cheers, because in the near future, people will go crazy for him. All the wealth, fame, and honor will be his. Kay shouts that he will make you a king. In his thoughts, he says that finally, the moment of his dream coming true is approaching and adds that he is looking forward to it. In an unfathomable darkness, you saw that oppression is under the sun, and there is no comfort for the weak, and power is on the side of the oppressors. He then declared that the dead are happier than the living, but better than both is the one who has never been born. Yu remembers the words of that light, saying that someday they would meet again at the top when the protagonist is stronger. In the middle of the night, Yu is awake in his dark room. He gets up with his dead eyes. The protagonist strokes the kitten. The next day at the gym, we see the old man and another boy. The trainer says that Josh wants to fight Yu, and if he wins, he wants to take him as an apprentice. While the boy agrees, Kei says if the boy can even scratch him, he will make him a champion. Sometime later, Josh is getting ready. Everyone around talks about the fight the boy will have against Yu and adds that Yu is a genius, but Josh is not weak either. The boy seems angry. We see that a moment ago, Josh was complaining to the trainer because he had won a youth competition, and most professionals respect him. Kei says he has said many times that in the world, a boy's talent is nothing special. On his short trip, he found 2 people with more talent than him, and it's not fun to train someone whose limits are obvious. The boy is a bit furious, but says he only needs 1 punch, then asks the trainer if he really just needs to scratch him. Josh shouts that he will crush Yu and prove him wrong. Kei says he is looking forward to it. In the present, we see the boy already in the ring. The trainer is teaching Yu how to wrap his hands. Josh is angry because Yu doesn't even know how to wrap his hands by himself. The crowd is excited, asking for the fight to start soon. Someone asks if everything will be alright, and another comments on the protagonist's body, saying it looks like he has never set foot in a gym. A guy tells everyone never to underestimate someone the trainer brought in. In his thoughts, it reminds him of when the trainer first brought Eren. Their talents were on a completely different level from his. He wonders what Josh will do when he sees there is an opponent he will never surpass. Kei says everything is ready and then asks if the protagonist is nervous. He says no, but questions why there are so many people gathered. Kei says this will be Yu's first boxing lesson, so from today until the end of Yu's career, he must not be hit even once. The boy agrees somewhat reluctantly. Kei says that is all the protagonist needs to know about the first lesson. The two are already in the ring and the trainer is very excited. The referee starts the match. Josh charges our boy with tremendous force. Yu just observes, calmly dodging. Again, he evades. None of the boy's punches are hitting Yu. Josh tries again, but the protagonist dodges. The crowd admires Josh for being so fast and having such sharp jabs. However, the trainer is in pure excitement. Everyone starts to realize that none of the boy's punches are landing on Yu. The same guy as before says the protagonist doesn't have power but speed, as he is easily dodging those relentless punches. He asks if he was seeing Josh's punches in slow motion. The protagonist dodges again. Everyone says this is unbelievable. Josh is exhausted, saying it's impossible since he couldn't land a single punch. The boy realizes that when the trainer said he couldn't even scratch him, it wasn't a joke. He was serious. Josh sees a huge wall in front of him. He says he needs to calm down. At this exact moment, Josh says he will combine several attacks to make them less predictable. Even so, his effort continues to be in vain. He questions how this is possible, saying he is working harder than anyone for many years, trying to be a champion, but all his dedicated time seems worth nothing. The trainer says he knows how unfair it is because he knows Josh is a good boxer, his footwork and direct jabs along with his exhaustive training hours, but that's all the boy has. No matter how much Josh wants to deny it to himself, his effort can't surpass divine talent. The referee blows the whistle, saying the first round is over. Josh is exhausted, while the trainer says it's time to end this. Kei says now it's time for the second lesson. He says if you hit someone on the chin, they will pass out. In other words, you just needs to dodge and hit. The trainer asks if it's easy. Yu says yes, dodge well and punch well. A boxer works for years to perfect these 2 factors, but a genius is born with a natural ability to create his own style of movements. Yu's a prodigy, so just give him simple objectives instead of teaching mediocre moves. His existence is the very incarnation of boxing. Josh is angry seeing the trainer teach Yu what he doesn't care. The boy admits that Yu's reaction speed is amazing and adds that he has never seen such talent in his life. However, there's one thing talent can't do for him. Energy and endurance only come with effort. Josh says Yu seemed exhausted at the end of the first round. The boy says he lost a lot of energy getting nervous, but in the second round he will press Yu until he gets hit by his punches. The referee starts and Josh passes out. The referee wakes the boy, saying he is happy he woke up. Josh watches Kei walk away. The referee says it was a good try. Josh is sad, saying he now understands that Yu is on another level and understands the trainer's words that there is no fun in training someone with such obvious limits. The protagonist asks if Josh wants to go another round, but he says going further is too much and can even be considered humiliation. Yu tells him to do as he pleases. He is extremely frustrated. The boy says he has a question. Josh says that when the trainer visited the protagonist's country, he mentioned another person who is also strong, then asks if Yu knows who it is. Yu confirms, then asks if this other person is stronger than him. The protagonist remembers our brave one and says probably yes. Josh is sad and then lowers his head. The boy is left alone. We see a journalist talking about the latest boxer Kei is training. He says the lightweight matches this year will be exciting. A guy with glasses asks if the blonde found any scoop. The two talk about the first official match of the boxer Kei is training, and the blonde says it's hard to get information because the old man is very protective of his boxers. But this time, he managed to get a piece of information. He says the new guy has only been training endurance for the past 2 years. Our protagonist is running while remembering some boxing moves. Yu continues to run. Arriving home, he passes by his cat and goes straight to the bathroom to wet himself. We then see the boy's body. After that, at the gym, Carmen is introducing Yu's first opponent. She says his nickname is Rookie Killer and adds that he earned this nickname after defeating other rookies wanting to ascend to professional. His specialty is defeating amateur fighters using dirty tricks while fighting, but he is not a big threat if the fighter doesn't get caught by the dirty tricks. However, there is a concern that even though they trust the trainer's skill and insight as they always have, they believe Yu's weight reduction was excessive. Moreover, all they've done in the last 2 years is get Yu in shape and have him watch boxing matches, so they wonder if it will be okay. The trainer says this is a dilemma. Elsewhere, we see the so-called Rookie Killer training. The blonde from before is watching the training, commenting that the punch combinations are intense, and John's trainer says that's his main weapon. The guy says this is the big dirty trick. While using consecutive hooks, he ends up holding the opponent's head by accident, thus causing a knockout. Because it resembles a technique used by wrestlers, the spectators call it the guillotine hook. The massive power John has is the reason he has defeated several rookies. Someone catches the guy's attention. His trainer says it's a reporter, and he introduces himself as Peter. John gets excited. A while later, he is laughing, saying the opponent you will fight must be a big deal since even a reporter came to interview him. The guy wonders what kind of monster K has found this time. Peter laughs, saying it's for the newspaper, but personally he is interested in John's title as a rookie killer because it wouldn't be fun if this sport were predictable. John asks if the reporter knows a thing or two about the game. He says there are idiots making a fuss about how good someone's training was or how someone trained using some secret technique, and adds that he enjoys knocking out this type of person. Seeing their expressions after their dreams are crushed gives him an insane feeling. Calmly, Peter says he understands, then asks if John's style was born to provoke these idiots. John asks what the reporter is talking about, saying he is teaching them a lesson. Rules are meant to be broken. Even suffering some fouls in the end, he just needs to knock out the opponent to end up victorious. Peter says he is a good citizen, which is why he follows the rules. John continues, saying those guys have chicken brains because guys who fight by the rules are weak and cowardly. When he breaks the rules, they get pissed as if he stole some candy and says that there are only 2 rules in this world. Either you are alive or you are dead. The reporter says any boxer would get mad at John's provocations, especially if it's in their debut. Peter says John's style reminds him of a certain boxer, then asks if he likes the middleweight world champion Fabrizio Santorino. John asks if the reporter didn't know, saying the Santorino brothers are true warriors on this battlefield and are on a completely different level. They know what a real battle should be, which is why they are the best. In his thoughts, Peter says the association chose someone very interesting for the debut and then asks the reporter to tell Mr. K and his apprentice that he will spit and devour him in the ring. Later, we observe John and his trainer on the roof. The old man asks how the interview went. He responds that it was just a bit provocative, but asks his trainer if he will really win. He tells John to have more confidence because you never know what can happen in the ring. John says he will keep that in mind and then put on a good show. The next day at the fight venue, Yu arrives with K while various reporters are saying that Yu really is a fast boxer. Everyone asks how the trainer found Yu or which category he is aiming for. Carmen says they are not accepting interviews until after the fight. Next door, John says there is a lot of noise in the other room, and his trainer asks if he is nervous. He responds that crushing the lives of rookies is the meaning of his existence. His trainer says that's the spirit. Someone arrives saying John is next. He gets up, saying it's showtime. The crowd cheers when they see John. Everyone says he is the rookie killer, but more like a king. The audience is in great excitement, which makes John even more excited. We are introduced to the commentators Peter Cullen and Bob Norris. Cullen says everyone is excited for the debut fight, and Bob says that's because it's the match of K's latest fighter in the ring. John says this will be a guaranteed show. He has never seen so many people for just one match, so he can't wait to see the look of disappointment. Cullen says Yu has arrived standing at 175 centimeters and weighing 61 kilograms, wrapped in a mysterious cloak. He wonders what K will show them. K looks at Yu and then asks him to step up. He looks and climbs up as the trainer asked, looking up and seeing the lights. Peter asks how the match will be for someone who has only trained endurance for 2 years. Someone in the background watches. The trainer tells John to keep a close-range fight to prevent the opponent from making quick movements. K tells Yu to do exactly what he asked, no more and no less. Cullen says the match will begin, asking if the big guy will finish off the opponent or if the young one will emerge victorious. John thinks Yu is too calm for a rookie. He wants to see if he will stay this calm after the fight starts. Everyone watches the fight begin. The referee starts the match. John says it's time for a welcome trot, but something happens. Someone like this awakened a fear in John that he had never felt before, making him tremble until he swallowed hard, a kind of fear he never thought he would experience, like a gun being pointed at him. Everyone talks around, some saying Yu will try to keep a long-range fight. John curses Yu in his mind. When he moves forward like a shot, a punch heads his way, blood spills from his cheek, and everyone is astonished. K just smiles. Going back to a few days before the fight, Carmen says she doesn't understand. K wonders how he will cook him to leave the audience in shock. Punches are aggressively thrown at John. The trainer prepared our boy to present himself to the audience, and even if there's a chance to finish, Yu is not to do it to show the crowd who exactly Yu is. The audience is impressed. The other trainer asks what kind of monster he brought this time. John looks at the ground, saying he blacked out for a second. Then he sees blood. The referee blows the whistle to stop the fight. Cullen says that in quick movements, the protagonist turned John's face into a pool of blood. The physiotherapist pauses to check the wounds. In the ring, the doctor doesn't understand. The physiotherapist says that in 21 years of work, he has never seen movements like those. Seeing the situation, the referee asks if there's a problem. The man, seeing that specifically the wound, says punches or injuries only cause skin cracks. But unbelievably, those cuts are clean. Looking back, he asks how the boy did that with those gloves. Yu stands in an unshakable pose, while John is hallucinating, scared, his heart beating faster and faster. The doctor says there's nothing wrong, so John can continue the fight. Approaching him, the referee asks if John can fight. He says those were just scratches. The referee starts the match again. Bob says John is bleeding a lot, but it seems the wounds were not that serious. He says there's something wrong with the protagonist because he is different from any other boxer he has fought, not just because his skill is good. Boxing is a structured sport with rules where skills compete with skills. It's not like they are some kind of assassins, but he doesn't feel any kind of restriction from Yu's punch. Memories of his youth flash before his eyes, and he remembers the most dangerous type he encountered, the one devoid of emotions. John stays alert, saying Yu is very dangerous. The guy tries to do something, but the boy lands a straight punch. John staggers back, spitting blood on the ground. John says he hit him and notices the boy is visibly far away. He asks if he was even human. In a moment, the protagonist is beside John. Seconds later, a punch is thrown. The audience sees it. John tries to do something, but Yu dodges and hits him continuously, non-stop. What the audience sees is only blood. His trainer realizes it's impossible for John to win. In fact, even he must have realized he can't win. Yu is making a toy out of him. Kay smiles. John asks what the boy's punches are. When the blow comes, his guard is pierced instantly. Then he realizes Yu is not throwing any decisive punches on purpose. The protagonist lands a blow to his rib. John is in disbelief. In his mind, violence, the instinct to survive, blood, and violence resonate. There's nothing better than entertaining the audience. In the background, someone says Yu is the devil. He this time has outdone himself. The fun turned into ecstasy, the ecstasy of frenzied madness. Everyone is screaming, saying the trainer brought the devil himself. John says the protagonist is the kind of person who won't feel anything even after killing someone, so now he must try to limit his movements. Trying to play dirty, he attempts to step on Yu's foot, but Yu quickly dodges. John is astonished, but again he is surprised by another blow. He realizes the boy is reading even the movements of his feet. The crowd shouts, saying John tried to play dirty, calling him scum, and they demand that John just die. Yu throws a punch. The guy can't do anything anymore. Our boy hits him, landing several punches in succession. While the trainer says John still has a chance since Yu has dropped his guard and is within reach. John can grab him. No matter how good the reflexes are at that distance, he can't dodge, but unfortunately, the pressure from the crowd is overwhelming. John is exhausted, and his trainer asks him to pull himself together. More and more people are screaming, and John finds himself in a deep void. The trainer wonders in his mind if he is okay with this. In a flashback, we see that not everyone was born to be in the spotlight. 4 wins and 7 losses. With his ordinary skill, John didn't hit the jackpot. He was just someone disposable who had a few good hooks. His trainer arrives, asking if he is working hard again, and John greets him. He says the hooks aren't bad, but still have a long way to go. John says he is good at this thanks to him, and the old man says he lacks respect. The two stare at each other. John is angry because the old man said he still has a long way to go, and the trainer says his opponent has already been found. John gets excited, asking who it is, and his trainer responds that it is Isaac Dresner, a super elite athlete who has dominated several tournaments and is now trying to win the Olympic medal. John says he heard Isaac is trying to turn professional and then asks if he is in the same weight class. The trainer looks at him. John asks the old man not to make that face because he already knows he has no chance. He is practically being sacrificed for Isaac to make his debut. The old man lowers his head and apologizes, saying John would be better if he had more to offer. Smiling, John asks what he is talking about. Boxing is in his blood and in his head. He is the best, even if he isn't. If it weren't for boxing, he would be in the gutter right now. So he asks the old man not to apologize because he taught him a lot. Besides, punching the punching bag, John says it's not over until it's over. The trainer says those are wise words coming from a rookie, but anyway, he is still a rookie with a big mouth, and John complains. As expected, it was a one-sided battle. His trainer even tried to ask him to pull himself together, but he knew it was impossible to win. The guy keeps getting beaten, seeing in Isaac's eyes that he doesn't care about John. As expected from an elite athlete, John tries something, but the guy dodges, hitting him with a punch. John tries again, but Isaac counterattacks. Even getting beaten, John doesn't give up, but living for boxing for just one more day is enough. His life was always about stealing or being stolen from, betraying or being betrayed, attacking or being attacked. everyone followed the wrong path, advancing through the wrong life. A predator eats another predator, a dark and chaotic world. His memory is the old man complaining to him. But it was there that, for the first time in his life, John saw the radiant glory of this world. Whether caught by luck or misfortune, his arm trapped the guy's neck, but he knew he couldn't stop now, so he punched him. Everyone is impressed, including himself. Knocked out, the referee blows the whistle. No one expected John to win. Somehow, Isaac got up again. The humiliation of suffering his first knockout gave John a miraculous victory. Later, on the roof, the old man asks what the association said. John says they overlooked the fouls and ask him to fight like he did today, and if he can stabilize, the association will arrange fights so he will make money. The trainer asks what John's response was to that. He replies that the world also needs villains. Now at this moment, the crowd is shouting that justice was served, continuously demanding that he die. His trainer is frustrated. John doesn't know what to do. Cullen says this is a terrifying sight. Everyone tells the guy to try to do something. His trainer remembers that in the last interview, John said he admired Fabrizio. But he knows he would never admire that trash. The trainer says that at the end of every match, John suffers deeply in his room, yet the fouls cannot be justified, and John knows this better than anyone. If he decides to cheat again, the trainer will support him at any cost. No matter if others hate him, he will always be rooting for John. The guy continues to get beaten. His trainer says he will always recognize his talent. Hitting the ring floor, the old man shouts for John to give it his all to stay standing because he will always be by his side. John tries to fight back. He says he honestly envies him. Someone as talented as John would never need to worry about being sidelined. In fact, he would never be thrown out. He could even dominate the boxing world. But still, John's talent is second rate. People watch. Peter notices John will try to grab you. He says he will never retreat. The protagonist defends, the lights illuminating the ring, everyone watching in fear. John is confused. We see Yu delivered a devastating punch that fractured his opponent's bone. The guy steps back, yet the pain is overwhelming. Without any emotion, Yu finishes and John is knocked out. His trainer is astonished. Kay has an expression of absolute victory. The opponent kneels and then falls to the ground. The referee ends the match. The crowd screams, asking if John is dead. Cullen says Yu delivered a right that made the opponent collapse. The trainer asks John to get up. In his subconscious, the trainer says he should have stopped John back then. He wanted to tell him not to be a disposable boxer who just puts on a show, but unfortunately, those words never left his mouth. Because of his foolishness, the trainer did not have the skill to make John stronger, so he couldn't say a word, but he is sure that if it were that golden person, he would have managed to stop John. Almost crying, the trainer apologizes. On the ground, John asks why the old man is making that face again because he said before. The referee counts to end the round. John says the trainer taught him well. Realizes the guy got up. John adds that he learned a lot. The trainer is impressed, as is everyone present. The referee continues counting. John is almost standing. Yu does nothing. The referee continues the count. John says there is no reason for the old man to apologize because back then, he helped him a lot. John says he did something stupid again. What he really wanted was to be a boxer like him. In his last words, John apologizes. Finally, the referee blows the whistle, ending the match. Cullen says this is a horrible sight, a performance as merciless as a demon's, and then says that evil itself has just debuted in boxing. In the background, someone is watching. Everyone shouts and applauds, but he just walks away. Peter says the way you destroyed that guillotine hook was shocking. A short punch, literally a supernatural technique. Moreover, it was impressive that the protagonist used a hook to stop another hook, but only John received damage. Probably you aimed precisely at a weak spot. The boy's quick reaction goes beyond human limits. Looking at Kay, the man says he found the most powerful monster of all. Smiling, he says this is very interesting, a rookie who played with a rookie killer. First, it was Qasim, but now it's you. He adds that he can already feel the excitement of the strongest boxers, the appearance of a giant destined to produce waves big and small that will affect everyone around. A guy says you was incredible. He asks Josh if he didn't like the fight. He says he was just thinking about some things. Josh kind of feels relieved. What he always had was never an achievable dream. Josh tells his uncle he will do his best in his bartending show. After that, we see some people were disappointed. Sometime later at the gym, we see Chil saying he wished the rookie killer had won. He asks Jay if that is the friend he talked about. He says yes. The boy says Yu is ridiculously strong. Jay looks at the protagonist and gets very excited. In his mind, he says he knew Yu had something more. Chil tells Jay not to get too excited because the protagonist is living in a world totally different from his. The boy says he knows, but when they meet, he wants Yu to be proud of him. Then he starts jumping rope much faster than before. Chil watches in awe. Jay shouts that he can do this. He says this is not bad. The boy shouts louder, saying he can do this. Chil says this is amazing. The two start jumping rope extremely fast. Next to them, the master asks what's happening with them. Elsewhere, we see someone watching Yu's fight, saying it looks great. Behind him are several security guards. He asks if the man can beat him. Someone arrives saying Sumi's men are there. He says he's going and Big follows. The boy looks at the TV and then gets angry, feeling a deadly hatred. People scream. We see a man beaten up. The guy says the boy did a good job. Around him, several opponents are on the ground with bloody fists. We observe that Back feels slightly envious. Near where the tournament took place, a blonde man is happy. He asks Gene what he thought of the new fighter from Trainer K. The guy stops. Gene remembers the protagonist's punches. The man calls his attention. Gene says something. He says he is in love with you, and this Gene is the lightweight division champion, Jean-Pierre Manuel. In a dark place, someone is eating pizza and drinking beer. We see that another person is watching you fight, saying that's the guy. He says he thought it was someone worthy. Guys like the protagonist are worth 12. Suddenly, he shouts that this year's lightweight rookie is him. Another day, we see Peter saying that the lightweight division will be the most famous this year. You left a strong impression on all the fans. But as if that wasn't enough, another lightweight division fighter also had an extraordinary debut, Qasem Al-Jahad, the grandson of the president of the Jahad Group conglomerate. Just by appearing in boxing, he caused several rumors, but his frightening performance left everyone in shock. You versus Qasem, and there is no boxing fan who isn't excited for a fight between these two. The winner of this fight would be recognized to compete for the lightweight belt held by Gene, who has been undefeated for 10 years. Peter says he can't wait. Someone kicks the door. Everyone around looks. We see the silhouette of someone. Qasem shouts that he is back. He has a clear smile and then asks how the trainer has been all this time. He looks at it and says that the guy had disappeared for 2 months, and when he returns, he is in a pitiful state. Qasem asks him to stop the nonsense. His trainer doesn't understand. The guy says that all this rest made him eager for a fight. Qasem asks Sebastian to arrange the victims and says he will pay 10,000 for each attack, with bundles of money. He asks the people in the back to come and fight. The trainer remembers that when he first saw him in the gym, he almost kneeled. He asked if he was seeing things but attended to him normally as if he were a client who wanted to learn boxing as a hobby. He had said he had lost interest in things that could be bought with money, so all he wants now is the belt and the champion title. He thought the guy was just a bit excited, so he sent him a session of fights to go home, but the result was scary. A mere rookie defeated several professionals. Qasem may have gained some weight, but his style hasn't changed. He asks someone to get in the ring. Another guy steps up. His trainer says that even after seeing it several times, he still can't believe his eyes. It's displeasing, but it's his style. Everything is a game, and boxing for him is just another game to finish. Even so, Qasem is formidable. Another guy appears. The trainer says his style irritates him. They stare at each other. His opponent tries something, but Qasem easily dodges and quickly counterattacks. The guy asks what was the point of perfecting his techniques. He wonders what kind of movements those are. He left his defense completely open and throws random punches. The fat guy hammers the little guy. His trainer shouts for Qasem not to use his joints, as that would be a foul. He says he forgot. He asks Sebastian if he can buy the boxing association and change the rules. The trainer says it irritates him, but still he has that an unparalleled talent that others don't have. We see Qasem punch the guy again. We see the opponent now lying on the ground. Even with his clumsy style, the trainer says that makes 20 people. Anyway, Qasem is immeasurably strong. Without any training, he is stronger than others who train their whole lives, a strength that was gifted to him when he was born. 2 weeks have passed and Qasem is still fighting. He lands another blow on one of his opponents, who becomes dazed from the hit and falls face first onto the mat at Qasem's feet. He asks Sebastian, how many are left? Exactly 1,000, sir, replies the butler. Qasem says it's been refreshing. The trainer comments that he's crazy, that anyone else would have run out the front door screaming, and thinks he would like others to practice with him. He adds that Qasem was obese 2 weeks ago, but now he's back to his normal weight, having burned off all his body fat and developed a defined abdomen. No amount of training tires him because he finds it enjoyable and treats boxing like a game. He eats like a glutton and sleeps whenever he wants, as if he were the king of beasts. His physical skill and the amount of practice he puts in seem limitless, and his wild nature makes it hard to believe he's human. The trainer can't imagine him losing to anyone and believes Qasem will be the fighter who becomes the lightweight champion. We see a kettle on the stove and some picture frames on the shelf. A boy sits at the table looking sad. His father, noticing his expression, realizes it's because of the food. He tells his son they've only been eating potato soup lately, and that it must be getting tiresome. But the boy says he loves potato soup. The father promises to buy something better if he wins the prize in the next fight, and the boy is happy to hear this. He feels pleased to have cheered up his son, but thinks he'll first need to pay the overdue rent, utilities, and water bills. After setting aside money for food, there's still gas to consider. Maybe he can buy a chicken with what's left over or a steak if he gets a victory bonus. He concludes that such a bonus would be very nice. But he thinks that you never know what will happen in boxing. The scene cuts to outside the fight venue, where someone is panicking because Qasem isn't there, as the fight will take place the following day. However, someone bursts in, kicking the door open and surprising everyone present. It's Qasem Al-Jahad in the flesh. He asks if the person called Yu is among the common folk and remarks that he's been so kind to grace them with his presence but dares to make him wait, demanding that they summon him immediately. Some people wonder if Qasim al-Jahad is really there, and if it's the first time they've seen him in person. The trainer appears and asks what's going on. One of the students replies that Qasim is causing a commotion. The trainer is surprised when he notices Qasim's presence. Qasim sees him and recognizes him as the trainer K, saying he came in person to visit Yu. But as soon as he finishes speaking, the trainer grabs him by the legs. Qasim asks what he's doing, calling him an old madman. But K realizes that Qasim is an excellent specimen. His body is perfectly balanced with strong, lean muscles compared to those of a wild stallion, and of course, compared to him, he's just a baby pony. K concludes that Qasim will make a good story and that it won't be easy to find someone so well sculpted, as he's defined like a beast. K wonders if he'll enjoy watching Qasim being destroyed. Then K asks if Qasim is here to see Yu. Qasim replies that he is and assumes they will face each other before becoming world champions, so he was generous enough to come to see Yu. Trainer K responds that Yu is out for his morning run and that if Qasim runs now, he might catch up with him. Excellent, says Qasim. Outside, we see Yu hooded. He's running just as the trainer said. However, he hears something approaching. Qasim interrupts his run trying to land a punch on Yu, but Yu quickly dodges. Yu shows no surprise and simply stares at the man with a dark look. Qasim comments that Yu looks darker in person and asks if he finds it fun to box with such a depressive face. Yu remains still and calm, saying nothing. Qasim answers his own question, saying of course he doesn't. He turns around with a Machiavellian smile and says Yu should remember that people like him will never defeat him. After that, he runs off, shouting that the champion's belt is rightfully his. The protagonist stands there, not fully understanding what just happened. Later, we see the fight gym completely packed. Qasim is about to attack his opponent. James looks at him and says he knew it would be difficult, but compares his opponent to a wild beast. From Qasim's expression, he truly looks like an untamed beast. James attempts to land a punch, but his opponent dodges, ready to counterattack. He notices that the opponent is about to use a hook, but Qasim delivers a double punch, trying to land 2 hits simultaneously. James, surprised, can't believe what just happened, but it seems like Qasim wanted exactly that reaction from him. James calls him crazy and prepares for the attack. He assumes a defensive stance, but Qasim is ready to strike. Even though James isn't leaving himself open, he still feels the blow, and his opponent prepares to attack again. But Qasim, observing the fight, wonders why his opponents are so serious about boxing, thinking that boxing is just a simple game and that they should just loosen up and have some fun. James, on the contrary, doesn't seem to be enjoying himself. He just took a precise hit from his opponent, which seems to have struck him directly, sending him down to his knees. The fight commentator says it's an unbelievable way to knock someone out. Qasim forced his opponent to his knees with just sheer physical strength. Qasim remarks that the real loser is the opponent, who can't enjoy himself. Trainer K watches the fight with some colleagues and confirms that Qasim is indeed someone very interesting. He notes that Qasim might think he's attacking 2 places at once, but there's a reason boxers don't use such ridiculous moves. The power of a punch comes from the bottom, generated by the flow of energy from the legs to the core and delivered through the arms. But a position like that breaks the flow and makes it impossible for him to strengthen his punches, leaving him open to attacks, rendering that move pointless. However, his physical skill is another story. It allows him to channel his strength into punches that are out of the ordinary, turning a weak punch into one with high accuracy. His incredible beast-like athletic ability makes the impossible become reality, concludes K. We finally return to the fight, where James has gotten up and still has some strength left in him. Qasim says it's time to end this and slides with his feet, preparing to attack. James wonders what Qasim will pull out this time, and notices that the distance between them is too great for the opponent to land a punch and knock him out. But with his crazy physical skills, it might be possible. James thinks that his only chance to win is now and plans to use a counterattack when the opponent throws his punch with full force. The stronger the opponent attacks, the harder it will be for him to be hit by the counterattack. It's beastly moves against boxing techniques. Who will win this fight? Qasim charges in to attack, and so does James. Both want to win the match and are giving their all. But when James tries to use his counterattack, he misses, and is startled because he was confident he would succeed. However, his slip-up proves costly, and something serious happens. He is hit by his opponent and is thrown into the ropes of the ring. His eyes are completely white and his mouth is bleeding. His knees are keeping him propped up on the ground, but soon after, he falls completely. The commentator says the knockout was incredible, and Qasim has his fist in the air as if he's certain of his victory. In the background, we hear the fight count. Qasim is exuberant about his imminent victory, celebrating and calling himself all-powerful. But he looks to the side as something catches his attention. His opponent is getting up before the count is finished. His expression changes to something quite unpleasant. James refuses to lose the fight. He thinks of his son and the promise he made and tells his opponent not to take boxing lightly. His voice is weak, but he tries to continue. But his strength is completely exhausted and he falls permanently to the ground of the ring. Kosum scoffs and asks why he should listen to advice from a loser who doesn't know how to have fun. An opponent in the ring looks extremely scared, wondering what he's fighting against. On the other side is the protagonist with his dark gaze. His opponent is not at all comfortable fighting him, but Yu doesn't change his stance and is ready to fight. With just one punch, he has his arm raised by the referee and wins the fight. His face shows no emotion as usual. On the other hand, Kosum is also fighting and having fun. His opponent admires his athletic ability and can't believe what he's doing in the ring, comparing him to an animal. The fight between the two doesn't last long, with Kosum landing a knockout on his opponent and easily winning the match. With both arms raised, he celebrates his victory, proclaiming that it's undeniable he's the winner. As expected, Yu and Kosum quickly cause a stir in the lightweight division, with both rapidly becoming the best in the world. The protagonist enters the ring with clean, clear, and intimidating movements, while Kosum dominates his opponents with his unique, unconventional punches and an animalistic instinct. But who will make the first move? In the post-fight interview, an interviewer praises Kosum's performance and asks what he thinks of the match result. Kosum starts by energizing the crowd and asking if they enjoyed the show. Then he hits straight to the point, saying he wants the belt and will soon achieve it. But first he has someone else to deal with. He threatens to crush Yu and then declares that he will take what is rightfully his, the title of the best in the world. He tells everyone to say goodbye to old boxing practices because Kosum Al-Jihad is here to usher in a new era. As expected, Kosum was the first to make a move. Trainer K listens to the interview and struggles to hold back his laughter. But he can't resist and bursts into loud laughter, annoying everyone in the room around him. While Kosum is laughing on TV, K is laughing in his office and he sarcastically says he'll have to give the enemy the best fight of his life. Kosum leaves the ring and is escorted to the locker room. His trainer thinks that his post-fight statement was as bold as his personality. The trainer didn't like him at first, but now he's dancing to his tune. Kosum has been leading him by the nose before he even realized it. His charisma influences everything and everyone around him, just like his boxing style. The entire audience shouts his name in the fight's farewell. Kosum has made a mark in the boxing scene, splitting fans into two groups. One group passionately supporting him, saying he has created a new boxing style that rejects current techniques, and another skeptical group criticizing him as a circus act that won't hold up against a real opponent. An expert defends that modern techniques are optimized based on fighters' experiences over time, but Kosum's style, while entertaining, is limited. Another commentator disagrees, saying this mindset shows someone stuck in the past and that it's high time for an evolution in the sport. Just as everything in life evolves, so does boxing. This is the moment all fight fans have been waiting for, and in other words, the outdated cannot stop progress. Surrounded by opposing opinions, Kosum, without hesitation, continued advancing and at his own pace defeated the more orthodox fighters, proving his strength, until gradually the opposition dwindled and became a disregarded minority. Kosum is openly paving the way in boxing. His trainer admires him and recognizes his potential and knows he was born to rise to the throne and proclaim himself king. On the other side of the story, we see Yu training with a punching bag. His trainer says he's been challenged, and the challenger is someone he's encountered before. Kosum Al-Jihad, the same person who confronted him during his run. This guy will be a bit different from the fodder the protagonist has been knocking out so far. Yu, as always, shows no reaction upon hearing this. Quickly, the day of the match arrives. The commentator announces that this is the main event everyone has been waiting for. Kosum versus Yu, a lightweight bout that has turned the division upside down, will begin. It can be said that this fight will determine who is closest to claiming the lightweight throne. Jean-Pierre, the lightweight champion, is in the audience. He came personally to watch the fight. Kosum's trainer mentions this to him and says that he's also worried about the outcome of this fight, adding that the chance to capture the championship belt Kosum has always wanted is just around the corner. He just needs to win this one and then face the champion. Kosum, in turn, asks the trainer if he thinks a mere belt will satisfy him, and then says he wants something greater than that. He aims to hold all the titles in every division and conquer the boxing world. The trainer thinks, as expected, this is the real deal, and he is eager to see how far he can go. The champion also seems interested in what will happen, but he has a vacant look similar to the protagonists. Yu is already in the ring with his trainer, who asks if he remembers what was said before, and Yu implies that he doesn't. Good, says the trainer, and with that, he exits the ring. The long-awaited match. Both boxers are ready to begin. Kosum, the unconventional fighter, comes armed with fierce intensity, while Yu, the boxing genius, approaches with a quiet and prepared demeanor. Who will be the victor in the most anticipated lightweight match of the year? The referee signals for the fight to begin. The excited commentator announces that it's time for the show to start. Kosum begins to move his feet, circling the ring with his unique beast-like gait. With his beastly gaze, he locks eyes with his opponent. Who will be the first to make a move and end this suspense? Kosum recalls his first encounter with the protagonist and notes that it was a casual meeting, a bit of what was to come. He then clasps his hands behind his back and says that now is the time for real fun, inviting his opponent to strike him. All other fighters can only use horizontal punches or cross punches from a certain distance, he says, referring to himself as the power that no one can defeat since everyone else is so formal and proper, unlike him, whom he considers more modern and creative because he views everything as a fun game. He moves his feet again, but just when he least expects it, an opponent's punch catches him off guard. His trainer is shocked by this, while Yu's trainer is extremely pleased. Qasim al-Jihad, who seemed untouchable, took a precise and unexpected blow. We see a flashback from before the fight when Ki warned the protagonist that his opponent was different from the others, and the protagonist, although still, listened to what was said. Kei says that so far, Yu has had to hold back against his opponents to put on a good show for the audience, but this guy is strong enough that Yu doesn't need to worry about that. He tells Yu not to hold back. On the floor, we see a mound of sand that fell from the punching bag through the hole the protagonist left while training for his big fight. In another moment, we see a trainer helping an athlete with sit-ups as he struggles and is almost completing the exercise. Another is exercising with weights and is putting in a lot of effort. The gym they're in seems to be packed. Others are practicing boxing, and the trainer tells one of them to use the backhand guard. Some are training the punching bags, punching and dodging. Others are stretching ropes to strengthen their punches. While some fall, others get up, and even running is part of the exercise routine. A scene then cuts to Qasim's face, which is terrified. He's about to take a punch from his opponent, which, though fast, Qasim's reflexes allow him to see coming. When the punch lands, it's powerful and spreads blood across his face. He panics and cries out in pain. Trainer K smiles as he watches the fight. He was expecting something like this to happen. According to him, there are only two types of people in the world who can dodge such a punch. Someone who lives in a world where time moves at a different speed, and someone with wild instincts. But even with animalistic instincts, it's a miracle to dodge some punches, as it's practically impossible to avoid them all. So the body instinctively focuses on minimizing the damage, resulting in excruciating pain in exchange for not being knocked out. Thus, the boxer must sacrifice another part of the body to absorb the impact and protect the chin. However, even if the vital points are protected, strong and precise punches to the body will naturally break through the defense. Qasim's body is managing to absorb most of the damage. Qasim says that the protagonist's hands are the heaviest he's ever seen, as if they were sandbags. He is extremely frightened because he doesn't know how to react. Yu, on the other hand, is focused and ready for more, landing a punch to the opponent's abdomen, causing him to freeze with the impact. Another punch from Yu follows in quick succession, and he lands another hit on the opponent, who is unable to react and can only scream in pain. The commentator says that Yu landed 2 consecutive body blows, and with that, another side of Qasim is revealed. His trainer realizes that he is now the prey and not the hunter, and never imagined the gap between them would be so large. Looking at Kei, he says he's an old sly fox. Kei, in turn, is simply satisfied to see Yu's opponent getting beaten badly. Qasim is about to hit the canvas. His emotions are completely shattered. He wonders what he's doing there. His opponent stands tall in front of him, staring at him with his dark gaze. Qasim wonders why he is fighting someone like Yu, and why everyone in the audience is applauding him. Is this fun for you? He asks, and the audience's happy faces at seeing him lose are evident, which deeply shocks him, to the point where he feels he needs to escape the fight. Yu, meanwhile, remains calm as always and focused on the fight. Qasim's trainer is surprised and irritated by his current behavior. Qasim retreats, trying to flee from his opponent, while Kei stands outside, laughing at the current state of the fight. Trying to revive Qasim, his trainer asks what he's doing going to the corner of the ring, and tells him to raise his guard, but Qasim is so confused that he barely knows how to react. He tries to lift his guard as instructed, but it's not enough to prevent the next blow from his opponent. He's hit again, nearly losing consciousness. His trainer is stunned by the opponent's strength, and at this point no longer believes in his athlete's certain victory, thinking he hasn't taught him anything. Qasim wonders what he's supposed to do since he's never been in such a situation before. He tries to attack the opponent but fails. Yu, on the other hand, doesn't stay idle and lands a punch right to the opponent's face. Qasim even spits out his mouthguard involuntarily from the punch, and is stunned in every sense by this blow. His trainer blames himself for the outcome, calling himself a big fool. Naively, he clung to the idea that they were inaugurating a new era of boxing by reforming things but forgot to teach his athlete the basics. This makes him consider throwing in the towel and ending the fight, but he thinks it's not the right time since Qasim hasn't been knocked out yet. He says they haven't shown everything they have to their opponents yet and believes that once you're in the ring, you should give it everything you've got. He shouts at Qasim to hang on until the end of the first round, and then he'll provide the next strategy. However, he looks at the ring and is surprised by what he sees. The protagonist stands still, watching the scene, and even the referee is stunned by what is happening. Kei, for his part, also watches joyfully. Qasim can't take it anymore and surprises everyone by trying to jump out of the ring. His trainer looks at him furiously, unable to believe he's behaving this way. The commentator also can't believe he's seen Qasim trying to escape the ring. This unpredictable situation has left the audience and the referee in shock. Qasim is reprimanded by his trainer, who scolds him for trying to flee the fight. But he doesn't care and just tells them to get out of his way. He says the trainer doesn't know what it's like to face you, and that he's not crazy enough to keep fighting him. With that, he says that everyone else is crazy, but he's out. The trainer, in shock, definitely didn't expect such a reaction from him, and then asks Kosum if he really thinks boxing is just a mere game. Then he slaps him in the face. Furious, he shouts that yes, the opponent is stronger. Maybe he's the strongest in the lightweight division or even in the whole world of boxing. But then Kosum asks what he's doing there. The trainer asks it if he really thought he would only fight weaker opponents and says that no matter how strong the opponent is, he must give his best. All fighters shed blood, sweat, and tears while training to step into the ring and fight. Kosum is impacted by these words from his trainer, but still believes his previous intentions were true. He remembers that he had scorned his opponent in the last fight, saying that the advice of an old loser was worthless to him, and that his intentions were just to have fun. But now everyone is watching him, and he wonders if that really was his goal. He also recalls that he heard earlier that boxing is not just a game. With that, he breaks down in tears. Crying, he runs away from the fight scene. The audience reacts, which makes him cry even more. Seeing this, his trainer blames himself for ever letting him step into the ring. But due to the opponent's withdrawal, the bell rings, and the referee declares Yu the winner of the fight. Thus, the much-anticipated clash between the two rookie prodigies ended in an unbelievable way, with Yu winning in 1 minute and 32 seconds. Trainer K laughs heartily at the opponent's swift retreat. After this match, no one saw Qasim Al-Jahad step into the ring again. The scene shifts to James's kettle on the stove. The door opens, and the bell rings. The boy notices someone has entered the house and is holding a bag of chicken. James, injured but happy, sees his son, who is also happy to see him. The boy enthusiastically smiles. The protagonist is in fighting stance, his opponent staring at him with a shining gaze. He says Yu is trembling with fear against the mysterious cat boxer, as if Yu had never had a chance against this wild hunter, the Cat King. The cat prepares to attack the protagonist, and a fierce battle ensues with very fast exchanges of punches. Yu gracefully dodges all the attacks coming his way. The cat also has sharp reflexes. Trainer K rejoices, laughing. The cat's eyes shine, while the protagonist remains static. But with a brief slip, the cat lands a blow, and Yu is surprised by it. However, we see that all of this was just a dream, and Yu is awakened by his cat in real life. He says that as a professional fighter, one must know how to handle their own body. At least that's what he usually tells his students. Since the protagonist seems to know exactly what he's doing, this no longer applies to him after his last fight. However, there is still the possibility that his body has accumulated some stress, so he recommends Yu take it easy. He praises Yu's performance in his last fight and says he should rest a bit, not wanting to see him in the gym until the day after tomorrow. The sun shines in the sky. The outside of the protagonist's house looks peaceful. His clock shows the time as usual, and he, as always, pets his pet cat while watching something on TV. The expert from before asked another if he still thinks he is stuck in old habits, and reminds him that he warned that experience cannot be defeated. But the protagonist changes the channel to a news story about a giant penguin found on the beach. He changes again, this time to a horror movie, but it doesn't interest him. On the next channel, a soap opera is playing, but he switches to another channel showing an anime. Nothing pleases him, and he remains bored. On his clock, only a few minutes have passed. He recalls the time when a friend bought a new game and invited him to play at his house. With that, he thinks about it. His cat, apparently sleepy, is about to doze off on his lap. The scene cuts to outside a game store. An elderly man in his 50s says it has been 30 years since he founded his tabletop hockey association. People laughed and said he was wasting his time doing something. But now he finally found what he was looking for. As he plays with his opponent, he concludes that he has finally found the genius who will lead the revolution in tabletop hockey. On the other side of the table is the protagonist, who doesn't quite understand what the man said. The old man continues, saying he has the potential to be the best in the world at tabletop hockey and invites him to join him in changing the sport's direction worldwide. But Yu declines the offer, and the old man questions why. He says he doesn't have any hospital bills to pay or anything like that, so he says goodbye and leaves the place. The old man is Indiana Jackson, president of the Tabletop Hockey Association, and at the peak of his age, he was heartbroken. The protagonist moves on to another game and tries to learn how to play. It appears to be a music game, and he manages to score a perfect score. Some who observed say the protagonist achieved the highest score in the game's hardest song, wondering if he was some sort of game professional. After that, he moves on to a fighting game, and apparently performs very poorly. His opponent in the game is surprised by his performance and comments that his moves are like those of a beginner because he doesn't know any combos and everything he does is the classic 1-2. But he wonders how the protagonist is blocking his attacks and considers the possibility that he might be using some kind of hack, even though it's just an arcade game. A few hours have passed since the protagonist arrived there. He barely played and is already bored with the pastime. The end of the day arrives and the sun's about to set. The protagonist sits on a park bench gazing at the horizon. He observes people passing by and sees a couple with their child. He doesn't show any reaction and just keeps watching the leaves falling from the trees until someone approaches him and calls his attention. A boy with a smiling face and a radiant look stares at him, seemingly recognizing him from somewhere. The protagonist notices his presence, and the boy asks if he is the boxer he saw on TV. Yu simply remains silent and does not respond, but the boy insists he saw him boxing and asks for an autograph. The protagonist replies that he doesn't have one. The boy asks him to make one. He thinks about it for a moment, and then takes a notebook and signs his name in a very simple way. That was enough to please the boy. He says Yu was really strong, and so is the red-headed guy, and then tries to narrate the fight according to his childish perception. This manages to irritate the protagonist. The boy asks if Yu will face the champion soon, and he replies that maybe. The boy gets excited because the champion is strong too, but he thinks Yu will win the fight. Does that mean he'll be the strongest? The boy asks. Maybe. The protagonist replies with no enthusiasm. Upon hearing this, the boy says he wants to be strong like Yu, but Yu responds that there's nothing good about being strong, and that it doesn't matter how well you fight if you die when someone shoots you in the head. The boy is shocked to hear this, but Yu continues, saying a car can also kill if it hits someone, and a painful death can also happen if you encounter a lion or a tiger in the jungle. With a determined look, the boy stares at him and says he wants to become strong enough to defeat a lion or a tiger, but the protagonist cuts him off and says he could still die from a disease. And even if you're lucky and don't get a disease, you will still die like everyone else when your time comes. He tells the boy that his mother and father will die, and that he will also die someday. And even before that time comes, people can choose to commit suicide if they're tired of living. With that, he concludes that there's nothing good about being strong. The boy's face turns tearful, and the protagonist looks at him mildly. The boy then simply runs away crying, but this doesn't affect the protagonist in any way. The streetlights turn on and night falls. Yu, hooded, still remains there. He walks a bit on the sidewalk. Another boy appears in the same place as him, and as Yu walks, the boy follows him. Later, we see the entrance to Yu's garage. He enters his house, and is warmly greeted by his cat. With his usual somber look, he greets the animal, and says he hopes it lives for a long time. The sky is well studded with stars at night. A boy seems to be sleeping inside the garage, and Yu sleeps in his bed next to his cat. Elsewhere, we see only a heartbeat. Outside, the champion is slowly opening his eyes. After finishing his meditation while sitting in the ring, Jin, the champion, has a sad look. He is sitting at the table, ready to eat, but his wife looks at him furiously. She notices his expression and sees that he's not eating, so she asks if the reason is that he doesn't like her food. Still, he gives no answer or reaction. The woman remains angry, glaring at him, but Jin just stares at her, and seeing her only thinks about his future opponent and can't even pay attention to what his wife is saying. In another place, we see a secretary working, typing on her computer, and after working, she stretches a bit. But then she gets up and, looking out the window, sees a man jumping rope. It was Yu training. The secretary notices that he's there again, and that other boxers would normally use this time to rest. But she thinks the protagonist really doesn't need it, though she thinks he should at least take a day to rest. In the same training routine day after day, and he does it without fail. This is because he is a professional boxer despite everything. Even so, sometimes he wonders if Yu is some kind of robot. For over 2 years, he has always had the same empty expression, never making any friends. He's always practicing completely alone, training according to his coach's instructions. The secretary, seeing the protagonist in this state, notices that he doesn't seem genuinely interested in boxing. But does he really like anything to begin with? She wonders, and thinks that maybe he likes his cat. His next opponent will likely be the lightweight division champion. Thinking about it, they share similar vibes. She continues drinking her coffee and observing him, but concludes that Yu is a bit more, something she can't quite describe. Even if he wins the title, while she thinks this, Yu just stares blankly ahead. The secretary concludes that she can't imagine him being happy. The scene cuts back to the champion with his eyes closed. He is meditating in the middle of the ring. His coach is watching him, and notices that Jin has been meditating for longer lately. Trying to think of the reason, he concludes it might be to better prepare for his opponent. The coach asks Jin about his condition for the fight the next day. Jin simply replies that it's excellent, but excellent isn't good enough. The coach suggests they do one final test. Jin keeps insisting that being excellent is not enough, and that he needs to be better than excellent. In another location at the protagonist's gym entrance, his coach tells him to pay close attention to his opponent's last fight. The announcer introduces the event and says the match will start in a few minutes. The title fight between the number 1 in the world division, Till Schneider, and the lightweight world champion, Jean-Pierre Manuel. The protagonist watches the fight with his usual expression. The coach says that currently there are 5 top fighters in the pound-for-pound rankings worldwide. Junior welterweight, Yuto Takeda. Middleweight, Fabrizio Santorino. Junior heavyweight, Victor Grigorievich. Heavyweight, Aaron Tide. And finally, the protagonist's next opponent, lightweight, Jean-Pierre Manuel, winner of 37 fights and 31 by knockout, a genius who became champion without losing a fight in 10 years. Among the 5 mentioned, Jin is the best in terms of boxing technique perfection, and the coach warns the protagonist to observe how well-aligned his punches are. He moves his fists at the opponent's eye level, blocking their line of sight and sense of distance. Jean-Pierre can see his opponent very well from his position, but his opponent cannot. Jin's long reach and powerful movements are major obstacles. All he needs to do is position his extended fist in the right place and he'll control the other fighter. His total reach is an incredible 2 meters. The protagonist doesn't react to this, but the coach mentions that this is 15 centimeters more than his own reach, which averages 173. So 2 meters is a devastating number. But technically, his reach is not just 2 meters. In the video, Jin moves very quickly. His feet never stay in one place. With this, he strikes his opponent with great force and precision. The coach draws the protagonist's attention to the speed of the jabs and the great distance when he moves back and forth. The perceived reach of his jabs exceeds 3 meters. He asks Yu if he knows what this means. Jin's look is very similar to Yu's, and he replies that it means no fighter can escape his reach throughout the entire fight, from start to finish. The kinetic energy generated by his incredible speed and long arms makes the power in his jabs equivalent to blades. Almost imagining how the match is from the opponent's point of view. The opponent faces Jean-Pierre, but he behaves like a fencer. When attacking, it's as if his arm is a sword ready to cut the adversary, and his punches are so constant they seem to come from all directions. The opponent notices the force of the blows and thinks they're more oppressive than he imagined, but he doesn't just sit idle. Jin remains static, waiting to be attacked. His opponent moves toward him to strike, but he fails to land a punch. He defends the attacks launched, but warns that he knows Jin will use his crab defense to block the punches, so he tries to land a right cross. But Jin wouldn't be the champion if all he had was his reach, and by observing closely, we see how he defends against the opponent's punch. And then he immediately counterattacks, landing a solid hit. The opponent reacts with a cry of pain. Jin moves his feet quickly and strikes him again with force. He used a shoulder roll to deflect the punch, then switched to a southpaw stance and slipped sideways before delivering a right hand to his opponent. That was a perfect decision, says Kay. Only 2 boxers in the world have reached this level of technique close to perfection in such a short time. One of them is Jean-Pierre Manuel, and the other is the protagonist. But he has another weapon besides his reach, which Yu does not have. What is the other fighter seeing at this moment? Jin's right fist is now being completely oppressive, indicating that the timing and positioning of his movements have changed. The complete switch to southpaw has completely confused his opponent, who can no longer gauge the timing and distance. Jin's opponent tries to guess his movements, but fails, taking a right jab in the process. Then, when it seems like his opponent is adjusting, Jin switches back to an orthodox stance. Jean-Pierre is an ambidextrous boxer who skillfully and almost perfectly uses both the orthodox and southpaw stances. His opponent is extremely confused by this and feels completely lost, unable to gauge timing or distance. What he is doing is instilling desperation in his opponent, keeping him in the dark. All the opponent can do is stand there, desperate and completely blind, knowing he is being annihilated. Jin's technique controls time and space in the ring. He lands every blow and wins the fight. As always, his performance was flawless from start to finish. The coach asks if the protagonist understands that perfection in technique is what he's after. Long distance and short distance, orthodox and southpaw, timing, speed, rhythm, control, and psychological warfare, all aspects are close to perfection. The announcer declares Jin the undisputed champion. As expected, the fight was entirely in his favor, and he is asked how he feels about the fight he had. Jin replies that he is not satisfied. The timing between his steps and the coordination of his weight distribution failed several times, according to himself. But he promises to improve in the next fight, and says that if he makes the same mistakes, it will cost him his belt. The announcer asks which fight he is referring to. He responds that the question is quite obvious. The fight against Yu, number 3 in the world rankings, and says he is eagerly looking forward to fighting him. Coach K laughs upon hearing this. He says that Kosen was a big fish in a small pond and that guys like him are small notes, but Jin is different. He is not content where he is because he is a true boxer, carefully honing his skills in an effort to reach the pinnacle of boxing technique. He also says that he understands Jin's talent and is amazed by his obsession with perfection, which makes him even more eager to see Jin's fight with the protagonist. Jin is standing, observing something. He notices how his opponent moves. The internal muscles are visible to him, even the arm movement when throwing a punch. Yu lands a punch on Kasim, and Jin watches the fight, absorbing everything about his next opponent. He sees Yu's guard and observes the force he used when attacking Kasim. When the fight ends, he hears the bell ring, and also hears the announcer announce the unbelievable result of Kasim being disqualified after fleeing the ring, giving Yu the victory by TKO in 1 minute and 32 seconds. The protagonist's calm expression intrigues him. It seems that somehow Jin identifies with him, even finding the fight's outcome beautiful. Jin is lost in his thoughts, and doesn't notice that while serving his own coffee, he's spilling it outside the cup. His wife doesn't understand what's going on in his head. She tries to call him by name but is ignored. So she calls him again, this time shouting. With a shout, he snaps back to reality, realizing his mistake with the coffee. The woman asks what's wrong with him, noting that he's been sulking lately, but he doesn't respond. She insists that he's lost in his thoughts about boxing again. His gaze remains lost and vacant. The wife says it's always the same with him, that Jin always seems to be elsewhere when he's with her, wondering if he no longer cares about her, and if he still truly loves her. Jin simply responds that it's irritating. The woman is surprised by the response. He continues saying that her incessant chatter annoys him. Sometime later, an interview with Jean-Pierre takes place. The interviewer asks the trainer if he can tell a bit about what kind of person the boxer Jean-Pierre is. He's an artist, replies the trainer, saying that this is the most fitting way to describe him. He has invested his entire life sculpting the beauty that comes from perfect technique, and anyone could say that he has devoted his whole life to this beauty. The interviewer, alongside his team, emphasizes the perfection of the technique, and mentions that he heard the champion's training style is quite unique, asking if they can see a bit of it. The trainer responds that he can't show too much of his training, but shows Jean meditating in the ring, and the entire team watches him closely. The interviewer confirms that it's true that Jean meditates before starting his training, and says that he once interviewed another boxer who trained at the same gym as the champion. Recalling the interview, he mentions that he thought at the time that Grigorievich, the fighter, was crazy, but with Jean he has no idea what's going on in his head. In the interview, Grigorievich says that Jean always meditates first before training, but it's not just for a few minutes, it's more like at least an hour. Sometimes he sits and meditates all day. And after he gets up from his meditation, the way he trains is very different from the usual parameters. He assumes a fighting stance and remains as still as a rock. At first, Grigorievich had no idea what Jean was doing, but then he observed him more closely. He saw that Jean's position changed after he went back to hitting the heavy bag for a while. This left him super confused. Then he would take a breath and come back to see if he moved again. But an hour passed and he finally understood what Jean was doing. He then asked the interviewer if he wants to know what Jean was doing, and answers that he was practicing a jab. He was breaking down every movement into parts for a whole hour until he finally completed a jab. The interviewer, upon hearing this, can only conclude that Jean is truly crazy, and Grigorievich agrees. Back in the present, the interviewer concludes that everything Grigorievich said was true, but it doesn't make logical sense to him, as what is the purpose of this type of training? He asks if the meditation is meant to relax his mind and body. The trainer responds that on the contrary, saying that Jean is meditating to awaken all his senses and enhance them before entering battle. And he concludes by saying that he's sure the interviewer knows what it's like to concentrate intensely on something. He responds that of course he does. All stimuli around Jean disappear and only the object he focuses on becomes vivid. He is meditating to intensify this feeling multiplied several times. The trainer says he could spend the whole day explaining, but the interviewer would only understand if he tried it himself. However, he declines, saying he doesn't want to interfere. Trust me, says the trainer, it will take much more than this to make him lose focus. Even feeling awkward, the interviewer agrees to try. He sits in front of Jean and also tries to meditate. The trainer says it's quite simple. He just needs to sit in a comfortable position and focus on the present. The interviewer takes this opportunity to sneak a peek at Jean and concludes that he can now see for himself that he certainly seems to have a unique aura about him. Now that he realizes this, the interviewer closes his eyes completely and tries to truly concentrate on meditation. The interviewer follows the trainer's instructions and tries to focus on the present. After a few seconds with his eyes closed, he wonders if he's doing it right. He then tries to concentrate more and understands that the present is silent. Can you feel your heartbeat? Asks the trainer. The interviewer tries to listen to his heartbeat, and it beats strongly. Indeed, he managed to feel it. The more he concentrates, the more clearly he can feel it. The trainer says that this was good enough for a test, and says he's sure that he can feel something distinct even in this short time. If an untrained person can clearly feel the beat of their heart, imagine what a master in meditation could feel. Jean is deeply focused on his meditation. He feels every pulse of his heart, every fiber of his muscles, every living cell in his body, all the central connections in his brain, and his entire bodily nervous system. The trainer says that the champion's desire is to achieve total control of his muscles, from the strongest to the weakest, from his head to the tips of his toes. And with all this control, he aims to reach the pinnacle of technique. The day has turned into night, and the champion awakens from his meditation. He asks if the reporter has already left. The trainer responds that he has. Since the meditation took so long, he said he would return next time to complete the interview. The trainer asks Jin if this is because of that boxer. Jin simply replies that it is, and says that the way he moves and his timing are different. Strategy, reach, evasion, stance change, and defense, all techniques that Jin has honed and polished, are all useless against him. He says that's why he needs to intensify his focus even more. The trainer doesn't like hearing this and tries to get his attention. Then a training partner overhears what Jin said through the trainer, and says he tried to argue but wasn't listened to. Everyone present in the gym is surprised. Jin, with his cold gaze, prepares to fight all three at once, and not only that, but all of them are armed with knives. Jin simply tells them to come at him. The guys are stunned and don't know how to react. One of them thinks they just have to trust Jin's ability and everything will go well. Another says he can't be responsible for what's going to happen. With that, the three of them launch their attack. Jin also moves towards them. His trainer, who was watching everything, is amazed by the outcome. He's already finished what he wanted. And on the ground, we see only one of the guys fallen with a knife beside him. Jin says this won't work and that it's not enough. There's no murderous intent in your opponents. At another moment, Jin is interviewed and asked what boxing represents to him. The pursuit of beauty, he replies. Every heartbeat, every breath, every movement from the largest muscle to the smallest fiber must be perfect. The belt is the confirmation that the one who wears it is the closest to achieving perfection. I see perfection, he says, the perfection that is only sublime in its beauty. That first jab of the fight. How many people truly understood the meaning of that jab? Even Jin was surprised by it. Trainer K looks proud. Jin tries to maintain his composure, but his eyes are glued to the fight. The perfection he has been pursuing his whole life was there. After this, we see a patrol car driving through the city in the rain. One of the officers comments that a strange rumor is circulating among the local criminals. His partner asks what kind of rumor. In an alley, a fight is happening. The thug with a white weapon in hand who is there takes a punch right to the face and falls to the ground with a bleeding nose. The officer continues, saying that a guy suddenly appeared and started beating up the local criminals with his bare hands. We see a hooded man in the alley near the fallen thug. As we get closer, we see that the man is Jean-Pierre. The officer doesn't know this, but concludes that this man must want to be some kind of hero or something like that, and hopes that's all it is. According to the thugs, the man is also collecting their blood. A scene cuts to the side of an old mansion. Inside, a painting is being created with blood instead of paint. Heavy thunder crashes outside the house, making a lot of noise. But this doesn't scare the painter, the same one who attacked the thugs on the street. He says that this isn't enough. Later, in another location, we see a training session. The fighter's feet are moving very quickly. Jin's trainer watches him and asks what happened for him to be like this. He notices that in just a few days, Jin's shadowboxing technique has changed completely. His movements are imperative and desperate. Jin is moving faster than usual, yet he is still extremely precise in his movements. He's able to evade attacks more quickly. His trainer thought he had already achieved perfection, but recently he is improving at an incredible pace. But how is this possible in such a short period of time? The trainer admires Jin for this. His training ends and night falls in the city. Jin says goodbye to his trainer. The trainer, in turn, calls him by name and says he has seemed tired lately and asks if everything's okay since Stella, his wife, was worried about him coming home late at night. Jin pauses for a moment and asks if that's how he looks. He then says that he has never felt as good in his life as he does now. The trainer seems to have anticipated such a response. Jin turns to leave, but his trainer calls him again and tells him to stay well and not get too deeply absorbed. Jin hears his trainer and walks away. It seems the words had no effect on him, but he continues walking and leaves. In an alley somewhere in the city, a thug is chatting with his gang, and someone approaches him. The person stares from a distance and hooded moves into the alley. Their movements are light and calm. The thug wonders what this is. Then Jin stands in front of him, surrounded by the entire gang. His heart is beating faster than normal, but his eyes are as cold as ever. The thug asks if he's the guy who's been causing trouble in the alleys recently. Jin simply assesses the situation and notices that about 3 meters ahead, there's a man carrying a gun. At 11 o'clock, an individual who appears unsure if he's armed. At 9 o'clock, about 5.5 meters away, a woman carrying a knife. At 1 o'clock, about 3.5 meters away, a man holding a knife. At 5 o'clock, about 4.5 meters away, another guy with a knife. His heart is still racing from adrenaline. Jin in turn says they're not good looking. The armed thug asks what he's talking about and holds his weapon, saying that he just made a big mistake by acting like an idiot in front of him. But before any of them can do anything, Jin strikes him in the face. He says he will first use the jab, the punch with the best reach and speed, to temporarily incapacitate the armed man. While he faces the next gang member, Jin notices that the fastest they can react to an unexpected situation is in about 0.4 seconds. Next is the guy who must be armed. He will use his strongest punch to incapacitate him for a good while. That was a very good move. He says he will take a quick breath and go after the guy with the knife at 2 o'clock. Thus, he concludes that it was the perfect time and distance. He has 2 seconds until the guy at 10 o'clock with a knife reaches him. Jin dodges the knife of the guy at 2 o'clock and says his move is obvious and predictable. Then he will land a right hook. Since it's a clean hit, he doesn't need to worry about this target anymore. Immediately, he switches his stance and uses the rotation of his body to deliver a full-powered punch and put the guy with the gun to sleep. The knife guy at 10 o'clock is in shock. Jin finds this method inspiring. Now for the last guy at 5 o'clock. He turns around but is surprised because the guy points a gun at him. This is the worst possible scenario because the man is about 10 meters away. Jin's heart, which was already racing, now accelerates even more. He panics for a moment thinking he's going to die, with his heart feeling like it's about to explode. At the same time, a gunshot happens. Gene concentrates and manages to feel the internal movements of his body, but the man still points the gun at him. He remains standing in front of the armed man. All of his organs and nervous systems react electrifyingly to the gun pointed at him, awakening a type of adrenaline he has never felt before. The currents in his brain seem like a light show from how hard they're working. With all this reaction, the man is struck full in the face, as Gene had all of his energy focused on that punch. The city, seen from the horizon, looks calm, and the commotion is confined to the alley where the chaos occurred. Gene is sweating coldly after the fight. He looks at his hands and wonders if he really did that. He finally achieved what he wanted. For the first time, his eyes show some satisfaction as he finally reached his goal. Back in his sinister mansion, he paints another picture with human blood he collected. He emits a satisfied smile as he now has achieved a satisfactory result. While he brushes his painting, he remains enthusiastic in his own way, saying that now it's time to meet him. Someone enters through a door. It was the trainer who arrived at the gym. He sees Gene and says that he arrived earlier. But upon closer inspection, he sees that Gene isn't acting normally. Gene, in turn, tells the trainer that he needs to preserve this current feeling. With that, he gets up and quickly goes to the punching bag. The trainer calls his attention and says that his eyes are changed, and he wonders if something happened last night. Gene is already training with the punching bag. The trainer thinks he might have finally achieved what he wanted. Gene is intensely focused on his training. He thinks about his opponent, Yu. With this, his eyes widen. What does it mean to be human? He thinks. As he strikes the punching bag, he reflects. Humans are imperfect beings, according to him. This attitude doesn't please his trainer, but he continues, saying that the countless errors in justice make everyone look clumsy and foolish. His expression shows dissatisfaction with all of this. He concludes that he has to overcome all errors and imperfections. With a knee strike on the punching bag, he throws it away until it hits the wall and stops. This satisfies him for a brief moment. His trainer observes everything he does and notices the sand falling from the punching bag through the hole caused by the punch. He says that perhaps Gene has achieved it. Gene says he is seeking perfection. Elsewhere, Stella, his wife, is crying and calling Gene an idiot, wondering how he could say such terrible things to her earlier. The bartender at the bar where she is wonders what's wrong with her, as she's had only one non-alcoholic drink and is already so upset. He tells her that he has to close the establishment now. In turn, she glares at him angrily and asks if he finds her annoying too. Serious, the bartender replies that he does. She continues crying, saying that all men are equally idiotic, and wonders why they find her annoying when she is beautiful and sweet. The bartender hears this and thinks he just wants to go home. Elsewhere, Yu is being instructed to do another set, just like the one he's doing. He performs the exercise faster and faster. Gradually, he finishes the sit-ups. The secretary watches from a distance, noting that Yu has intensified his training as the fight for the title approaches. His trainer tells him to keep up the pace of the training. Yu doesn't seem tired at all. Kei says he needs a strong body ready for any movement and prepared for any situation. He also advises him not to imitate anyone but to do what he has always done and what his body tells him to do. That's all he needs, says his trainer. The secretary, watching from afar, thinks Yu will win this time as well. Otherwise, the coach wouldn't have brought him. That's the kind of person he is. His life's purpose is to win. While listening to the coach giving instructions to Yu, the secretary is sure that in his mind, there is nothing but victory and defeat. Kei tells the protagonist to take a short break now, and then they'll go straight back to training for the next exercise. But the secretary wonders what it's like for Yu and says she doesn't know what he's thinking. Why did he become a boxer? She asks. The day passes and night falls. Outside, the secretary sees Yu leaving and asks if he's done training for today. He just looks at her without saying anything. She says she has something to ask Yu and inquires why he decided to become a boxer. The protagonist looks at her over his shoulder and thinks about the answer he will give. Then he says he's not sure how to describe it, but that for a moment in the past he thought he saw a light and wanted to confirm what it was that he had seen. A light, the girl asks, not quite understanding. He remains silent for a brief moment and reaffirms that he is still not sure. With that, he says goodbye to the girl. She is intrigued but lets him go and tries to understand what the light you mentioned could be. She wonders if Yu will be able to find something there. As he walks away, she watches him from a distance, still surprised by what she heard. She didn't expect the protagonist to be sentimental. Everyone has their own reason for stepping into the ring. For some, it's for honor. For others, it's to try to find themselves. But some, though they are just one in countless numbers, still have a reason. Now, among all these boxers with their reasons and purposes, the two best face off in a match to determine the lightweight champion. Photographers try to capture the moment of the two fighters staring each other down. Their faces show no reaction as expected. But for a brief moment, Gene tells himself that he cannot wait, and that he can't stand waiting any longer to face his opponent in the ring. The night takes over the city. Shin's trainer watches him. Gene looks back at him. "Are you serious?" asks the trainer. Gene replies that he is. The trainer says that every individual has an ideal that he or she keeps close to their heart. He questions the point of living a life where you turn your back on your ideal. Jin says that even if it means he might die in the fight, the trainer shouldn't give up. Hearing this, the trainer becomes serious. Quickly, the day of the match arrives. Jin brushes his teeth after waking up. Meanwhile, he looks at himself in the mirror and notices something interesting. From the top of his toothbrush to the tips of his fingers, he can feel the shape of each tooth. When he puts on his clothes, he can feel every fiber on his skin. And even with each step he takes, he vividly feels the contraction of his muscles starting from his toes, moving up through his heels, knees, and thighs with each step. It's a world where every moment in time feels precise and everything is clear. Suddenly, he shows a slight smile. In front of him is the painting he made, which is responsible for evoking this feeling in him. His expression reveals a kind of morbid joy. In the arena where the fight will take place, the stands are packed. The announcer greets everyone and says that the day has finally come to decide the lightweight champion. The incomparable 10-year champion who has never lost a match against the top boxer or contender for the title. On TV, the secretary watches the fight, apparently anxious about what might happen. Others are also watching the match. The championship belt is prominently displayed. Trainer K asks if he was watching and says he will have it soon. He guarantees that the protagonist will gain more than just a belt. Soon, he will be the best among the weight classes and will hold all the belts in his hands. He looks at him with his classic serious expression, and the trainer tells him to go and claim what is rightfully his. Jin's trainer says he is sure that Jin knows more than anyone about the strength of his opponent, but he adds that Jin has surpassed all his limits, and this is probably his best chance to achieve his desired ideal. Finally, he tells Jin to go and fulfill his ideal. The fight between Jin, Pierre, and Yu is about to begin. The announcer asks if the 10-year undefeated champion will be able to protect his title or if the belt will have a new owner, ushering boxing into a new era. All boxing fans are focused on the most anticipated match of the division. The long-awaited fight has finally begun. Soon after, Jin tries to land a punch on Yu. Yu, in turn, dodges it effortlessly. Then Jin throws several punches in Yu's direction. The announcer points out Jin's reach and speed. The commentator says it looks like the champion came prepared. Yu continues to dodge all the blows. His trainer praises his performance and is just waiting for Jim Pierre's defeat. Yu, in turn, stands with his traditional posture and thinks this match will be more enjoyable than he expected. What follows is a story about the author's unusual personal experience. It happened about 16 years ago when the creator was an elementary school student. Obsessed with sports in school, he played basketball. He still vividly remembers that moment. Once he jumped higher than he ever had before, surprising all of his teammates and opponents and even himself. At that moment, when he jumped so high it felt like flying, it was the first time in his life he experienced a feeling where gravity seemed to not exist. That jump was the first and last perfect jump of the creator's life. From the start of the run, to the bend of the knees, the bend of the hips, the swing of the arms, and the final extended jump, every movement flowed smoothly and effortlessly as if someone else were jumping in his place. After that moment, the creator tried to recreate the same jump countless times but was never successful and never flew again. Here's another story, you may have heard it before. If you watch interviews with baseball hitters at the peak of their career, you might hear some of them say, "There was a moment when I could see every stitch of the ball coming toward me, and I would move reflexively." A clear, sunny sky contributes to this, and there are countless other legendary moments that go down in sports history. Just like Roberto Carlos' free kicks, where he struck with a curve and the ball would bend, allowing it to change direction mid-air and easily go into the goal, confounding the goalkeeper who didn't know how to react. Similar moments occur in tennis, when a player tosses the ball high and hits it with all their strength, with the racket, leaving the opponent thoroughly confused, and the ball striking the clay court with precision. In the fight, Jun's movements are no different. His feet and his classic stance compared to top-level athletes in other sports and Yu's dodging is equally impressive, as only a worthy opponent can evade so many attacks. Jin observes his opponent's movements, noting the angle of his foot, the tension in his calf, his cold and calculating gaze, the tension in his waist. All of this impresses him. He notices that the opponent will soon enter through this angle and thinks about the best course of action. When Jin attempts to strike Yu, he misses, as the protagonist dodges the attack but fails to counter. The announcer mentions that the challenger, who dominated all of his previous fights, is struggling to get close to the champion. As expected of the champion, he's showing his opponent that he is in an entirely different league, the announcer concludes. Trainer K says he is surprised. Although he knew the opponent was a remarkable boxer, he could only call him a genius at best. But now he is a monster at the limit. Did he reach that realm through his own efforts? Ku wonders with a sarcastic smile. Most soldiers who have spent a long time on the battlefield probably experienced that moment of war. Trainer K was one of those. He recalls his time in the Special Forces using a mirror to try and spot the enemy, only to have it shattered by a distant shot. K turned to one of his comrades and said he would go first. He then decided to advance. In the midst of battle, where the tension was extreme and life or death situations were relentless, an enemy projectile comes toward him, and K manages to escape. He too experienced that moment, when the heart races due to adrenaline. As he ran, he dodged bullets as best as he could, Numerous bones and skulls of the dead were in his way, leaving him extremely terrified. However, that moment lasted only a fraction of a second, but when a bullet almost hit his face, it felt as if time had stopped. Humans are born with potential to reach the extremes of their cognitive ability. And with this potential, they surpass the limits of human capacity. A major mistake is to assume that this transcendental cognitive ability only conveys tremendous evasive skills. No, what this ability gives us, according to Trainer K, is control over the body. Dozens of muscle fibers and joints all contract and relax at precise points and with perfect timing, and no energy flow is allowed to escape. The ability that sets world records, that remains unbroken for a long time, that creates legendary moments and immortalizes them in the sports world, is the same one that makes unrestricted technical perfection possible. The same ability Gene uses. Trainer K says he has been waiting for an opponent like him to appear. He says boxing is not a sport for breaking records. It is a sport where two people face off at the limits of their abilities. Therefore, no matter how strong a boxer is, it is impossible for him to show his true strength if his opponent is weak. But if the opponent is Gene, perhaps K will see both performances at their peak. Gene's trainer, in turn, only watches his fight attentively, but K wants him to show his true strength. As someone striving to push the limits of his abilities, Gene is capable of demonstrating how far he can go, and Trainer K wants him to show the full extent of his true power. Meanwhile, the protagonist, who is also in the fight, dodges his opponent's attacks, tries to strike him in sequence, and then dodges again, trying increasingly to close the distance between them. Gene is very close to him now. Yu tries to hit him, but Gene dodges. The opponent attempts to counterattack, but also misses. With a punch, Yu tries to attack again, but misses. The audience, however, finds the match very exciting, wondering how the two are evading the blows so swiftly. Even the announcer says he can't believe what he's seeing and that a fierce battle is taking place. The tension in the ring is so palpable, it can be felt outside. Trainer K wonders what Jun's next move will be. The way things are going now, he's going to take you by surprise with his long reach, K concludes. Jin keeps his guard up and observes his opponent's movements. Yu, on the other hand, remains stationary. He's thinking about what was said before the fight. His trainer reminds him that his fight is tomorrow, and asks if he has been watching the title matches of the most famous champions every day as instructed. The protagonist responds that he has and will imitate his opponent's movements according to the situation. But K doesn't like hearing that and bursts into laughter. He says he doesn't know what made you think that, and asks if he didn't notice anything unusual when watching the videos. Why didn't you notice? Why do you keep moving like that? Why are you hitting so lightly? This is what you need to understand. Remember his movements, but don't mimic them, K says. Think and decide for yourself. Listen to what your body tells you. That's all you need to know, concludes the trainer. Seeing Yu change his stance, K smiles. The announcer wonders why the protagonist did that. The commentator notes that he shifted his weight precariously forward. Gene observes the extreme weight shift. It reminds him of the initial crouch in track and field. Yu's face is fully exposed, and it looks like even a light touch would be enough to knock him down. However, thanks to his new self, Gene knows he will be in trouble if he attacks now, so he intends to focus exclusively on his defense. But in a brief moment of distraction, Yu lands a precise blow on him. This leaves everyone watching the fight stunned, except for Trainer K, who seemed to be anticipating this moment. The entire fight venue and the audience come to a brief halt as Jean-Pierre, the undefeated champion for 10 years, falls to the canvas. He showed his true self. Jun's wife was in the audience with the others. Watching the fight, she noticed that he had fallen to the canvas and became worried. Not just her, but everyone present was surprised by this. Gene lay on the ring floor with his face covered in blood. In the audience, everyone wondered what had happened. Even the announcer who saw what occurred couldn't believe it, saying that the stadium was in chaos now. The commentator, in turn, was left speechless. Coach K no longer reacted, as it seemed that what he wanted had already happened. Noticing this, the commentator wondered how far he would go to achieve his goals. With 4 fingers raised, the referee pointed at Gene and asked if he was seeing. But Gene, still lying down, showed an expression of desperation. His coach remarked that he had fallen at a concerning angle. But he remembered that Gene had said that even if death was near in the fight, he should not throw in the towel. He listened to the count and, despite his concern, decided to follow the instructions. Gene remained sprawled on the canvas, doing nothing. He reflected on what might have happened, but he couldn't see anything. However, he seemed to have understood something. In his thoughts, Gene felt he had reached perfection, but his opponent had been in a different dimension from the start, and he concluded that he wanted to see more of this. Thus, he kept his hand firmly on the canvas. Coach K noticed his movement and immediately changed his stance. Gene was still down, but seemed to be trying to get up. The referee was still counting and was already at number 7. His body moved slowly, and his coach watched him rise from the ground. Yu, who had been static until now, looked at the opponent and noticed his reaction. Gene gradually got to his feet. He was not completely back yet, but his gaze showed something, which Coach K noticed. Even the protagonist reacted to this. Gene's coach did not seem pleased, and the referee finally stopped the count. This made the announcer go wild, saying that the champion had returned and recovered from the shocking blow. and that the damage he had suffered reflected his current state. The referee said that this was becoming dangerous. The punch Gene took, and the way he was getting up now, somehow raised a doubt in him about whether to let the match continue. He looked at Gene and said he couldn't read his eyes, but it seemed he had already made his decision. So he asked Gene if he could continue the fight. Gene tried to respond that he would be fine, and with a grim expression, he answered yes. This made the referee shiver. He said that even though Gene was the champion, as a referee, he had to stop the fight if it seemed like he was in danger, and told Gene to keep this in mind. Gene, for his part, told him to stop the nonsense and get back to the fight. With a serious expression, the referee prepared and resumed the fight between the two. Gene tried to assume an elevated guard position. You stared at him over his shoulders and focused on attacking again. The champion thought to himself that he must concentrate every nerve in his body, and that this time he wouldn't lose. An extreme center of gravity that seemed balanced on just one toe. Muscle fibers so tense they were ready to tear the skin and explode out. The movement of his pupils focusing on the target to attack. Once, no, twice. All managed to land a counterattack twice as fast, Gene said. You looked at him with his usual dark gaze, and Gene simply said that it was okay and wanted him to show what he was capable of. The protagonist leaped into the ring toward his opponent. As he moved to attack, Gene thought he wanted him to demonstrate the pinnacle of human technique. You got very close to his opponent and rated his feet in an attacking position. The opponent attacked, but he dodged and countered with a punch. Gene noticed that he used the muscles in his toes to accelerate once more before closing the distance. He observed the punch coming toward him and awaited the impact with anticipation, saying he wanted to see more of this. The punch hit his face, but he turned his head in time. Coach K noticed that he did this as a desperate effort to minimize the damage, and said that this technique wasn't so bad. Gene's face was covered in blood, and Coach K simply told him to do his best as he wanted to see how long he could last. Then Gene took another punch from the protagonist, but this time he did not fall and only stared back. He closed his guard, protecting his face. He was on standby to attack again. The coach simply watched the fight from a distance. Next, the protagonist landed another punch on his opponent. Gene isn't a boxer who can take many hits to begin with, said his coach. With a towel in hand, he recalled the first punch, and said it should have been impossible for him to get up after that blow. But his obsession and madness had lifted him back up again. Using his life as a guarantee, he had pushed beyond the limits of his body. He observed Gene, who was cornered in the ring. The protagonist was still attacking him. Gene maintained his boxing style as you advanced toward him, and his coach wondered if Gene's style was really so impressive to him. You prepared to land a hook and bombarded his opponent with blows. The longer he threw punches, the faster and stronger they became. There was little loss of kinetic energy between the movements. In fact, without losing control, he was increasing the energy. It was evident that he felt no nervousness about the fight, no desire to win, or fear of losing. There was no past, present, or future. None of that existed while he fought, only the technique as a means to an end. Gene perceived all this and concluded that it was magnificent. But he was back on the ring floor again. The announcer said that it was only the first round and the champion had already been knocked down twice. After recovering from the shock of the first knockdown, the crowd was already cheering for a new champion. But Yu only looked at his fallen opponent with his usual gaze. Gene lay on the canvas, bleeding more than before. In his thoughts, he wondered what it means to be human. Foolish and flawed organisms. One of his memories from the past resurfaced, a broken frame with a photo of a family, and one that appeared to be his mother saying she no longer cared and that everything between them was over. In the argument, his husband ordered her to leave his house immediately, and Gene wondered if this is what it means to be human. He said his story was nothing remarkable and full of cliches. In the real world, the count had started again. But still in his memories, Gene thought his story was about a treacherous mother and an incompetent father. A house with endless arguments where she was faithful only to her desires and he was clumsy in everything he did. This led Gene to question why they had him in the first place. Back in the fight, the count was already at 6. The coach said Gene couldn't continue and asked him to please stay down until the count finished. Gene reflected again that the answer to his birth was clear. He was a mistake born of the union of a foolish man and a silly woman. Imagining his past life, he still heard the count. His coach was agonized by this. Coach K, meanwhile, was anxiously waiting for his defeat. Yu, as always, showed no reaction. Holding the towel of his coach, couldn't believe what he saw. Gene was on his feet again, and said that this is who he is. With his mouth full of blood, he thought that this is what he was searching for. A being that transcends humanity. And he saw this being in a bizarre way in the protagonist. Gene, in his memories, found himself alone with his father. He asked his father if his mother wasn't coming back. His father, in turn, only wondered why things had turned out this way. Gene looked at his father and simply stared, and said that at that moment he felt pity for him. He was a person desired at work and relationships in general. Unable to calmly assess his situation or any problems he faced, he would continue making the wrong choices. That's the kind of person he was. Gene picked up the broken frame from the floor and looked at the photo for a brief moment. But as he gazed at the family photo, he then threw it in the trash. Compared to his father, he was a competent individual. He could assess situations calmly and prepare for the future. and he tried to imagine what would soon happen to his father. Back in the fight, the announcer declared that the champion was back on his feet after being knocked down for the second time. His level of tenacity and sheer madness. The crowd was cheering for the champion's fighting spirit, concluded the announcer. Meanwhile, in the audience, Jun's wife was desperate and afraid for him. The referee restarted the fight, and the protagonist, unlike his opponent, was fully prepared to continue. Coach K observed the champion's determination but said he was just a standing corpse, and this match was practically over. Then he wished for Yu to finish the fight once and for all. Jun's wife remained in the middle of the audience. She was praying for his well-being. Like lightning, the protagonist charged at his opponent. But before he could hit Jin, the referee intervened and grabbed him. It was the end of the first round, a miserable round for the champion. Once again, Yu proved that even the undefeated champion was no match for him. However, the champion was the only fighter who had stayed on his feet during the first round against Yu. During the break, a coach cleaned the blood from Jin's face and noted the destruction, saying he never thought Jin would take such a beating. This fight was no longer about the champion defending his title. He could really be killed, concluded the coach. He then pleaded with Jin to quit the fight, saying that he had told him not to throw in the towel even if it ended in death, but still wanted him to value his life. But what is life? Jin asked. You're born and then you die. That's all there is to do, and it's so meaningless. Where you can die in pursuit of your goal, isn't that the only meaning in life that humans can create? Jin questioned. The coach became furious upon hearing this, but Jin continued, saying that the coach had tried and failed to stop him, and that he must confirm his own existence. He addressed the coach as peer and told him not to dare throw in the towel or he would never forgive him. Only a few seconds remained in the fight. The coach still begged Jin to leave the ring, but Jin ignored him and prepared to fight. This made the coach extremely worried about his athlete. However, the match resumed and Jin was ready to fight. The announcer said that the shocking first round was over and now we were entering the second. Could the champion recover from his crushing defeat or not? He concluded. While his wife worried about him in the stands, Jin showed no concern in the ring. He remembered his father again, taking him somewhere, holding his hands. The boy said he knew his father would do this, but intended to stay calm during the journey. He concluded that he would not be knocked down by his emotions and would not be sad. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. His father stopped walking for a moment, and Jin imagined he would say something now. Then the father called the boy by name and said he had suddenly remembered he had something to do, telling the boy to wait for him here and that he would be back soon. The boy Jin thought his father's act was tragic. In turn, the father handed him a banknote and said to buy some snacks while waiting for him. Hearing this, Jin concluded he had expected it, saying that his father was clumsy even when abandoning his child. So he took the money and simply told his father to come back soon. The father cowardly turned away, leaving his son there, and walked away as if it were nothing. He didn't even say goodbye to the boy. As he walked away, Jin just watched him with the money in hand that his father had left, and thought that despite this, he would remain calm. For a moment, he stood still, but then he decided to leave as well, and turned in the opposite direction from his father and walked away, saying he would not be knocked down by his emotions and would not be sad. He sought perfection, that which is sublime in its beauty. Back in the fight, Jin looked at his opponent, and saw in him the ideal he had been pursuing. A perfect being that transcends humanity was right in front of him. Jin adjusted his stance and told the protagonist to show him one last time. The meaning of his life is ideal. Coach K went wild with happiness over this, but Jin's coach thought he really planned to die. Only a monster could adopt such an extreme stance, where everything depended on a single attack. Referring to Yu, the coach thought he was sure of this, just like Jin. The destructive power was strong even when Jin focused entirely on defense, but now it would be countered with all of the opponent's strength. Totally frustrated by having no other options, the coach picked up the towel and apologized to Jin, but said he was also a father and couldn't make his daughter a widow. Mentioning that he had taught Jin everything about boxing after discovering his remarkable talent for the sport, but regretted not having taught him the most important thing. Don't wish to be a monster, Jin. Live the life of a human, said Pierre. You need to learn that there are more significant things in life, he concluded. His daughter, Jin's wife, wondered why he was doing this, but Jin was distant from her, ignoring her. She asked again why she felt that Jin was about to leave her side forever. Jin, on the other hand, seemed not to care much about this. His wife wondered if he was really going to leave like this, but with a completely sinister expression, he stared at his opponent. Yu, for his part, focused on the fight. Jin moved his feet. The protagonist did too. Both were about to clash. However, the coach, with the towel in hand, was about to throw it in and said he was very sorry. Jin, noticing this, said that wasn't what he wanted. His wife left the stands and went toward the ring, telling him not to leave her. He quickly changed his expression when he saw her. The woman shouted, asking where he was going without her and saying she couldn't live without him, begging him not to leave her behind. But Jin remembered again when he was a child. On the day his father left him among the crowd, he clutched the money his father had left him, crumpling it, and said that, to be honest, that was what he wanted to say too. With a sad, tearful face, young Jin also wished he could have told his father not to leave him. Out of his thoughts, his wife shouted that he was going to be a father. Gene was in shock upon hearing this, seeming to not believe what was said. His thoughts went blank again, and he wondered what he was doing, staring at his opponent on one side and his wife on the other. With his face still covered in blood, he remembered that someone had approached him when he was a boy and asked why he was crying. As he lifted his head, the boy saw who had called him. It was Peter holding his daughter's hand, asking if Gene had lost his way. This made him finally understand something. His memory connected with his present. The past faced the future. Gene realized he had also been a clumsy person. Back in the fight, the announcer said there was a disruption from the audience, but the match resumed in a minute. But then something surprised him. Coach Kit was furious. You also noticed, but remained calm. The announcer said that the champion had left the ring, the bell signaled the end of the match, and the champion lost by disqualification. Gene told the two men there to get out of his way, and said that what they had belonged to the one qualified to receive it. The two men were at a loss for how to react. The audience didn't quite understand what was happening, wondering if Gene was fleeing like Kasim had. The announcer couldn't understand what he was doing amidst the intense clamor from the crowd. Then he looked more closely. Gene's coach seemed a bit more relieved. His wife, with tears in her eyes, also seemed relieved. The only one not satisfied was Coach K, who was about to explode with rage. Gene returned to the ring with the belt in hand and handed it to Yu, saying it now belonged to him. Yu, as always, showed no reaction to his victory. K, in turn, pounded the ring floor in frustration, asking how Jin dared to spoil the protagonist's victory. The announcer noted that the champion was handing over his belt to Yu, and the commentator said it seemed that Coach K had been deceived. For 10 years, the title holder had remained the same, but now the lightweight championship belt was being handed over to Yu. The protagonist observed the belt. The audience was ecstatic with his victory. The announcer declared that for the first time in 10 years, there was a new champion. A new boxing legend was born, and he asked what the limit of his overwhelming strength might be. Yu of the Lions Boxing Club claimed the title of World Lightweight Champion. The match lasted 2 rounds and 11 seconds. His record is 7 fights with victories and no defeats. Back in the locker room, the coach told Gene that he had suffered a lot of damage and should forget about boxing for a while and focus solely on his recovery. Gene just listened with his face covered in bandages. He then asked Peter if he would be a good pair. Peter replied that he certainly would be. The locker room door opened. The coach noticed someone had entered. It was his daughter who stared at Gene. She had a red face from crying so much. For a while, she stared at Gene, and then hugged him. Her father told her to be careful as Gene was in a fragile state now. Jean-Pierre Manuel, 39 fights, 38 victories, 32 by knockout, and 1 defeat. The protagonist held the belt as the announcer declared his victory. Yu was now the new lightweight champion. The crowd cheered for the new champion, and he just observed them from the ring. But his victory didn't provoke any reaction from him. He was simply annoyed by all the noise. In another location, we see a woman asking someone what he thinks about what he's seeing. The guy responds that he's incredibly strong. We see that he's referring to the protagonist, saying he possesses speed, technique, insight, and athletic abilities beyond normal human levels. The woman replies that Coach K won't be satisfied with just a mere belt. She tells the man to be prepared as the protagonist is the strongest competitor he has faced throughout his boxing career. Yes, coach, the man replies. He is the junior welterweight world champion, Yuto Takiya. The scene cuts and we see another setting where someone is searching for Ryu, pressuring one of his guards. The guard tells the other that Ryu ordered them to stay there because he would deal with the butcher alone. Furious, the man asks if the guard really left him alone. He then says everyone should go after the butcher together. We see a large, angry man. He is the number 2 of the Sumi gang, nicknamed the Butcher. Ryu faces him and asks why he is there. The butcher responds that it was he who invaded the place. He then attempts to kill Ryu with his knife. The henchmen outside notice several men lying on the ground and deduce that Ryu must have dealt with them all alone. They see the butcher's henchmen scattered everywhere, and they notice a strange noise coming from one of the doors. Upon entering, they ask their master if he is alright, but they are shocked by what they see inside. Ryu was standing in front of a glass window. The butcher and the rest of his gang were lying on the floor. Only Ryu remained standing in the room. He had the image of the protagonist holding the belt in his mind, and he seemed furious about it. His men tried to talk to him, but Ryu's face was filled with hatred. He couldn't shake the image of the protagonist from his mind. So to vent his anger, he kicked the butcher so hard that he was smashed into the table he was leaning on. This didn't satisfy him, and he kept kicking. When he finally got tired, he stopped and glared at the butcher. His men tried to call him again. Ryu asked what the hell he was doing. The scene cuts to a dazed look. On TV, Yu's fight against Gene is being broadcast. A young boy watches the match in awe and sees that Yu came out as the world champion. This leads him to wonder why the protagonist doesn't seem happy with the outcome, and he also questions why Yu became a boxer, saying that it's still a reason to celebrate. He looks around and asks if the men with him saw the same thing he did. One of them is angry because the chatty kid keeps saying Yu is the world champion. The other doesn't believe it and says he's not surprised that Ryu was devastated. He is the boy's coach and tells him not to be too impressed, and that he should focus on being well prepared for his debut match. He adds that the training period was long for a good reason, so he shouldn't be impatient or worried about being far behind his friend. The boy agrees, saying he will improve slowly and steadily, because he will always do his best. The coach thinks the boy's face looks innocent, and then he doesn't fit the image of a boxer, while the boy fantasizes about putting on a great show. He comments that he doesn't believe the boy is his son. But when the coach thinks about the difficulties his own father gave him back then, he concludes that the boy will also be tough to handle. He then says that from now on he won't watch Yu's fights anymore, which surprises the boy. He tells the boy that Yu's style is in a different dimension, copying him is a dream for average people, so watching his fights won't be of any help. Instead, he will watch the fights of Yuto Takeda. The boy asks if he means the junior welterweight world champion Yuto Takeda. The coach confirms, saying Takeda is the best in-fighter there is, and that this is the only path for the boy, so he will be a good reference. However, the coach thinks what he said to the boy is different from what he really believes, as he and the boy are more like that boxer than like Takeda, although the child is like a candle's flame compared to him. He tells the boy that he and his father always remind him of a certain boxer. Hearing this, the boy asks who. The coach thinks about the best way to describe him and says that he is respected by boxers of his generation worldwide, and that he was like the sun. The boy is surprised to hear this, but he is not an ordinary boxer, says the coach. But that doesn't matter. Just watch many of Takeda's fights, the boy agrees. Finally, the coach says that the boy's debut match is approaching and he will intensify the training. There are many different stories in the world. A story of hope where the protagonist overcomes adversity and continues to grow. Or a tragic story of a protagonist whose life was once great, but then spirals downward. Even a story where someone thought they were the protagonist, but ends up being the final boss that others must defeat. Everyone has their own narrative. The scene cuts to another setting where someone tells the children that it's time to eat. The children eat while watching the fight that Jean-Pierre lost. A man tells them to stop getting distracted by the TV and eat already, but one of them says that Jean lost the fight. The man is surprised by this result. There are stories where the true protagonist only appears at the last moment. While Yu holds his belt after winning the fight, the man's wide eyes watch him. He is standing in front of the TV, not believing what he sees. It seems that the man who was once a boy grew up and is now drawing a lot of attention. The man just gives a faint smile. In another place, we see a boxing training session. Someone enters the gym and greets everyone. The coach stops the training because his attention is diverted to something. His disciple also stops, not quite understanding what's happening. But as he looks more closely, the coach is astonished, and his student is astonished too. Then the boxer mentioned earlier appears at the gym's entrance, saying that he suddenly remembered a promise he made, but we'll return to that story later. Now the boy is running, imagining himself as a professional one day. He runs as fast as he can, imagining that he will finally become a real boxer. Thus, we see the story of a new protagonist continuing to grow. A few months after the fight, Coach Taifun Kim, 42 years old, owner of a small boxing gym. He looked out of a window in deep melancholy. Anyone who saw him would say that his midlife crisis arrived early. Well, they wouldn't be entirely wrong. Anyway, there was a good reason for this glum mood. Let's say a jeweler found a large raw diamond. Someone greedy would have tried to polish the diamond and take all the wealth. But Typhoon was the person, so that's not what he did. More important than wealth and fame was making sure that the true beauty of the rough gem could shine, so he entrusted the gem to the best jeweler he knew. Typhoon Kim, he was a real man, and his name is cool too. Full of determination and self-sacrifice, he made his choice, but fate had a different plan in mind. Something he perhaps didn't expect. A raw diamond the size of a building suddenly appeared and crushed the raw gem he discovered. Unfortunately, what good did his determination and spirit of self-sacrifice serve? Life became as meaningless as his effort to cure this middle-aged man's baldness. Learning that Ryu had left boxing, he stared out of the window. One of his companions even wondered if he was going through puberty or something like that. But fate had another unexpected twist. Someone walked through the door where he was and greeted Coach Kim, asking how he had been. He looked back and saw who had called him. It was the boy and his father. The coach was surprised to see them there. While training the boy and putting him through speed exercises, the coach tells him that to survive in the world of professional boxers, it's better if he runs until he can't anymore. However, his vision was the problem. The coach looks at the boy and asks if he is really the son of the man standing in front of him. The man replies that yes and says he didn't want the boy in boxing, so he could have an easier life than his own, but the boy is sure he wants to fight. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, says the coach. He wonders why he was chosen to train the boy, but the father responds that he is the best boxer he knows. With that, he thinks the two have been rivals since their boxing days. Kim had a better career, but he lost more direct confrontations. Currently, he is out of shape but used to be lean with an elite background, while his opponent was always a voracious boxer. Kim was a coach who wanted to make every punch count, but his opponent was reckless and aggressive, carving a path through all the punches he received. The father said he had been training his son with the basics since he was little. However, the coach mentions that he thought the father didn't want the boy to fight. He then looks at the father for a while. but the father replies that the boy's vision is a problem. Jay injured one of his eyes when he was younger, leaving him blind in one eye. The coach then realizes what this means. The boy has trouble orienting himself. He then understands the boy's situation, and during training he continues telling the student to keep running. The boy obeys the coach without hesitation. After running, he works on his back and neck, then his abs, says the coach. The student follows the instructions diligently. Clever old fox, that's it, concludes Kim. He thinks that the boy's father believes he can understand the strength of this style because he has experienced it firsthand. Then he tells the student never to think about using reach as a weapon, and then he only has one choice. He must endure all the punches and force his way through, no matter how many punches he takes. Next, he asks the student if he thinks he will have an advantage by closing the distance with the opponent. He answers the question himself, saying no. The student doesn't have the punching power to knock out his opponent, and now his opponent is close enough to knock him out with a hook or an uppercut. The coach also says that the student will need to learn to stay close to his opponent and train hard if he wants to be on the same level as anyone. The words slightly irritate the boy. However, the coach says he doesn't care if he is blind in both eyes. From this distance, his punch will certainly hit, and you really can. If another guy hits him once, he has to hit back twice. If he gets hit twice, he has to hit 4 times, and so on. He is also advised by the coach to train without glasses in the gym to feel the distance between himself and the opponent. What he needs is the energy and determination to dodge and close in on his opponent. He also needs to strengthen his neck muscles and have a body of steel to gain an advantage and survive in the battle. The coach reminds him that fighting in fight is the only choice. Slowly and steadily, he will win the race. The boy agrees. He says that the boy saw back Jongwon's alley restaurant on TV and asks what his motto is. Choose and focus, replies the boy. Jay still remembers that the slogan asks the customer to simplify their menu and focus on just 1 or 2 dishes. Exactly, responds the coach. He also says that some boxers might play around with this, or that this is not a pretty style of fighting, but he should just focus on one style and show how infighting can be intimidating. Yes, coach, replies the boy, as he continues his run. The coach said he heard the reason why Jay became a boxer and felt a bit responsible for what he went through. He thinks about it for a bit, and imagines that other boxers might be like gems, but Jay is like a tree. Yes, a tree might be less valuable than a gem, but the value of a diamond is decided when it is born, and once broken, it cannot be recovered. Now a tree is different. Even if it breaks, new life grows in the hope of growing more than the last one. The coach tells Jay to become a giant tree, and with that, he will be rooted in this place despite any adversity. Then the coach reflects on time. He says that time is the same for everyone. Some achieve things in the blink of an eye. Others waste time chasing the wind. But some wisely make every second count, waiting for the time to come. And time continues to pass. The coach tells Jay that his debut opponent has been decided. Finally, says the boy, extremely excited. But the coach is not sure what to say. Jay asks what he heard. He responds that the first opponent is very strong. His name is Rock Kang, a veteran with 40 fights and a record of 24 wins, 4 losses, and 12 draws, a fierce boxer even past his prime. The coach remembers he told Jay to show other boxers what an infighter can be, but this guy is one of the best in his category. He is the living example of someone who trains solely as an infighter. Besides that, he has a strong punch and practical experience, things that Jay doesn't have. In other words, he is an improved version of Jay. The coach explains to Jay a bit about his opponent, Rock Kang. While his peak may be over, he is a fierce boxer who is a champion, even if only for a short time. He is a living example of someone who trains solely as an infighter, an improved version of Jay, says the coach. The boy is stunned to hear this. Normally, a beginner shouldn't have a match like this for their debut, but all the low-ranked fighters are already occupied, so you ended up facing the Rock. One of the coach's assistants is surprised that Jay is debuting against such an opponent. The coach asks if his assistant thinks Jay can win, but the tattooed assistant responds no. Neither of them believes in the boy's victory. But the coach corrects himself, saying he doesn't agree with Jay's defeat and that it brings bad luck. He tells Jay not to worry because they have a national champion infighter at this gym. Jay thinks it's hard to believe this is true. But he introduces Steel, 29 years old, a national super middleweight champion. The coach tells him to use the Rock's strategy in training against Jay. Steel says he'll take it easy as long as Jay doesn't have a mischievous smile. Jay, in turn, is very frightened. With that, the coach announces the start of the training. He comments that in a match between 2 infighters, boxers usually use hooks and uppercuts when they are close enough to touch shoulders. In other words, whoever has less spirit and strength loses. He advises Jay to use his hard legs and torso to maintain his body while landing punches. He tells him to keep pushing the training object forward. But to be honest, he says, when it's strength against strength, Jay has no chance. While The Rock has a strong neck and torso, Jay has a body and physique better suited for an outboxer than an infighter. So when faced against someone who clearly surpasses his physical strength, what Jay needs to do and understand is crucial. Steel notices that Jay has gotten a bit stronger. Jay, for his part, seems quite determined. He moves quickly around the ring. while Steele praises his performance. Jay responds with quick steps and speed. When their bodies are really close and under pressure, Jay moves to the side. His opponent will lose balance and open his guard. He is advised to gradually close the distance and work his way up to close range to stay out of the opponent's line of sight, continuously moving to the side. Steele notices his movement and lands a punch, saying that he is slow and needs to go faster. The coach says that unless Jay is a natural genius, there will be a big difference between the skills of a veteran and a beginner making his debut. A veteran has advantages in almost everything: mental toughness, real practice, tips, and the ability to handle unexpected situations acquired only by fighting countless times. But there is one advantage beginners have over veterans. While watching the opponents fight, the coach warns that this is information, and says that there is no information about Jay, which is his advantage. On the other hand, there is plenty of information about The Rock and his fights. He cannot predict his movements, but we can predict his, says the coach. He concludes that this will be the strategy against the opponent. In the first half of the match, The Rock tries many hooks and uppercuts, but the punches that will knock out are his straight punches. Knocking someone out with a straight punch is almost an obsession for him. If The Rock sees any opening, he will try to land a straight punch. So what Jay needs to do is train intensely to hit the opponent's right side after dodging. In other words, a liver shot. No matter how tough the opponent is, even he cannot escape a liver shot, as this punch targets the liver, causing extreme pain. The coach consciously instructs Jay to create an opening when pressured. This will make the opponent try to land a straight punch, and that's when Jay will dodge and land a liver shot. Listening carefully, the boy agrees. His coach instructs him to push harder, be shorter and faster, use his body weight correctly, and to unleash his true potential. The coach tells Jay to move as he imagines, and continue with his elbows down. Using all this, Jay manages to perform well against Steele. Jay takes a short rest afterward, but it doesn't take long for him to start a new session. His coach pushes him to go a bit further, and makes the boy reach his limit. Faster, the coach shouts. Jay, with all his strength, tries to meet the imposed goal, and shouts as he runs as fast as he can, covering the entire designated course. Looking at himself in the mirror after training, Jay notices that his physique has improved significantly. Night falls and a starry sky emerges. Jay is already lying down ready to sleep. He thinks about his upcoming debut match. His anxiety keeps him from falling asleep. His father gets up from bed, thirsty, and goes to the kitchen for some water. But on the way, noticing Jay's room, he doesn't see him there. Under the starlight, Jay trains outside his house. He imagines his opponent in front of him. With that, he practices what he's learned so far. His father watches and comments that Jay's shadowboxing is sharper. Proudly, he watches his son train. Jay notices that his father is awake. The father asks if he can't sleep. Jay replies that he is nervous because his opponent is a real strong guy. He knows he just needs to do his best and show how hard he's trained. But he doesn't want to lose in his debut. He fears he might fall into oblivion. His father looks at him for a brief moment and says that he himself was once a beginner, so he understands what Jay is going through. He confirms what Jay said, that for a professional, winning or losing is different from fighting and disappearing. But there is definitely something more important than winning or losing for a professional. There is a boxer whom Jay's father has admired since he became a professional, and every time he watched his matches, he felt something. His eyes light up as he remembers this. He concludes that there is something beyond winning or losing. Hearing this, Jay reflects on it, and thinks that now the best thing to do is focus on his match. Regardless of winning or losing, he will focus on giving his best in the ring. The day of the match has finally arrived. Someone approaches and says it's Jay's turn in 5 minutes. His coach asks if he's nervous, and the boy replies that he is. Steele says it's understandable since Jay is inexperienced. He's never experienced this before, but he's sure the boy will get through it. The coach says Steele was just as nervous in his debut and even had diarrhea on that day and couldn't fight. Compared to that, Jay is doing superbly, he concludes. Steele doesn't like to remember that. On his debut day, he was locked in the bathroom. Jay feels a bit more comfortable, but Steele is extremely embarrassed. The coach says the waiting time is over and they need to go. Jay looks extremely excited. He walks down the gym hallway toward the ring. His expression is pure focus and concentration. His father wishes him good luck from the stands. The arena lights up. Jay gets excited as the moment has finally arrived. He climbs the stairs and is finally entering the ring. As he steps through the ropes and into the ring, his eyes widen in surprise, because there are many lights shining in his direction. On the other side is his opponent. It's The Rock. Jay thinks he looks bigger in person, but he tells himself not to be intimidated and just do what he's trained for. His coach tells him to remember the strategy for the first round. Theme being an outboxer and keep distance, then surprise the opponent by switching to infighting. The strategy will only work once in the match. After that, Jay will have to fight as he trains, says the coach. Jay confirms and says he can do it. Approach, speed, lateral steps, and hooks with uppercuts to the opponent's left side as soon as he throws a straight punch. Revisiting the tactic in his head, Jay reassures himself that he can do this. The referee starts the match. Jay prepares for combat, But almost immediately, his opponent's punch appears right in front of his face, and only the sound of the impact is heard. Jay is hit squarely by his opponent. His coach is shocked. The referee points out that he's down. The Rock just stares at the opponent on the canvas. The final count begins. The coach is disappointed by the opponent's quickness, and thinks that if the fighter doesn't know what his opponent has up his sleeve, the best thing to do is knock him out as soon as the fight starts. It's almost impossible for a petrified beginner to prepare and recover from a surprise attack in their first match. Obviously, they did everything they could to prepare for this match. However, one way or another, there is something they couldn't foresee. Jay is used to taking punches. Furious, the Rock stares at the opponent getting up. Already used to taking hits from bullies, punches from a brilliant classmate with incredible talent to a national middleweight champion. The boy is already a veteran when it comes to getting beaten up. He gets up from the floor and says it wasn't that bad. After being punched, this familiar feeling returned, actually helping Jay calm his nerves. He is calmly resting and waiting for the standard 8 count, which is proof that his mental state is intact. The Rock concludes that Jay hasn't done badly for a beginner. He minimized the damage by tucking his chin before the punch landed. Jay is used to being hit. It seems that training sessions with steel were like real matches. Standing completely upright, Jay is ready to fight again. His opponent perceives that this doesn't mean Jay hasn't taken any damage. He says not to hate him, it's just his fighting style, always going all out. The match resumes with both fighters ready to continue. The Rock declares that he will finish Jay off now. Then he proceeds to attack him again. Even surprised, Jay manages to evade the blow. He moves to the right of his opponent as instructed. Jay notices that the opponent is indeed aggressive. He continues to dodge the attacks and moves quickly between them, trying to corner his opponent as he trained. The Rock concludes that Jay is an outboxer. Comparing Jay to a slippery eel, he asks how long Jay thinks he can keep up this pace. Then he tries to close the distance and attack Jay. But Jay notices his opponent increasing the pressure, continuously invading his space. It makes a standing effort to attack an outboxer. The Rock observes how Jay moves around the ring and says that outboxing is for weaklings and he will show that real fighters are infighters. He then positions his foot to strike, and Jay notices his movement. The opponent charges at him with determination. However, Jay dodges because he anticipated what was going to happen. Then he prepares to counterattack, leaving his opponent very confused. After positioning himself, Jay lands a hook right on the opponent's chin, just as his coach instructed, making the same opponent vibrate from outside the ring. The opponent drops to his knees, and soon after it he falls completely. Jay is surprised that he managed to do this. The referee starts the count for the fight. Still on the ground, the Rock thinks he was caught off guard and reflects that this was the opponent's strategy all along, and he is surprised by the punch he took. He realizes that Jay's level is completely different from the outboxing skills he displayed, and finally understands that Jay is actually an infighter. Jay's coach notices that now that they've exchanged punches, the advantages have shifted. The Rock then gets up before the count finishes. With that, he resumes his stance, and the real fight starts now. The referee allows the fight to continue. Quickly, the two move toward each other and clash, staring each other down. First, they begin the psychological warfare. Whoever has the higher hand will have the advantage. The Rock notices that his opponent is quite solid and decides to test him to see how far he is trained. Both land punches simultaneously. Jay quickly dodges his opponent's blows. The Rock, in turn, also keeps up. They continue hitting each other mutually. Jay's coach recognizes his talent, but says he has average skill, and reminds him that he wouldn't stand a chance against geniuses like Yu or Ryu, let alone the current opponent. However, there's something about him that catches the coach's attention. He's not sure how to describe it. He thinks it might be Jay's consistent effort to always do his best, but says all professional boxers try to do that. But with his expertise, he can't quite pinpoint it. As the coach reflects, an old man walks near where Jay trained. Standing in front of the bandaged tree, he wonders if it's always been tilted that way. The coach concludes that Jay definitely has something beyond just effort. Back in the fight, The Rock is impressed with his opponent's resilience and realizes that he has trained a lot, saying that Jay has more spirit than the average beginner. Still, he doesn't stop attacking. Then he lands a punch to Jay's abdomen, making the boy feel a lot of pain. Next, he lands a blow to his face. Jay tries to defend, but notices that his opponent is truly strong. He thought he could somehow get used to the pressure of fighting after training with steel, but his opponent is too aggressive. This makes him conclude that the best approach is to use speed. With that, he quickly moves to the side of his opponent and tries to keep moving quickly. The Rock is surprised by his speed, but Jay lands a punch to his face. His coach notices that he landed a 1-2 combo without defense. The opponent observes his technique and asks if this is how it's going to be. Jay thinks he can dodge what's coming next. He has already been hit by faster, sharper, heavier, and stronger punches. The Rock takes another punch to the face and becomes even more irritated with his opponent. The coach says Jay is performing better than he expected. This is Jay's debut match, but he's already outdoing his opponent. The coach mentions that he knew there was something special about Jay, but didn't think the boy could go this far. He believes Jay is capable of maintaining his current pace. The Rock tries to hit his opponent, but Jay dodges. Then he realizes what he had anticipated. Jay, in turn, does not lose focus on the fight. He recalls the training sessions he had with Steel and repeats what he learned in the match. With each punch the opponent throws, Jay dodges because he trained for this. And with a counterattack, he hits the opponent in the face again. Steel watches the match and notices that Jay is doing well. His coach also admires him. Jay dodges faster and faster. The opponent isn't making it easy for him. Still, Jay manages to evade effortlessly. Jay delivers several attacks in the direction of his opponent. The Rock tries to counterattack, but Jay dodges. Jay's coach begins to think he might actually win, and encourages him to keep it up. His father, watching from the stands, also hopes he keeps up the good work. However, the first round ends. The coach tells Jay that he did a good job implementing what he trained and says they are ahead on points, finishing by telling Jay to keep up the good work in the second round. Jay simply responds with a yes to his coach. The Rock, in turn, says it's been a while since he's seen a beginner worth his time, and that he can see ambition and signs of hard work in his opponent. He also comments that Jay would easily defeat an opponent who fought all 4 rounds instead of him, and that the boy is particularly skilled at dodging his punches. Lastly, he says it's just a guess, but he thinks there might be someone behind Steel who influenced Jay. However, he says that regardless, Jay has no chance against him. The boy is a bit tired but determined to win the fight. His father thinks it might be dangerous. The second round begins and the referee authorizes the fight. Both fighters charge at each other and clash. Jay is pleased that his training seems to be paying off, as he realizes his movements are really working. He then moves around the ring, attempting to strike his opponent and hitting him from various angles. He notices he has an upper hand. Meanwhile, The Rock has switched to a defensive game, which makes Jay conclude that he has more points, and that he could actually win the fight. The opponent tries to land a cross punch, but Jay easily dodges it, and he concludes he needs to stay on his toes and increase his accuracy, and his speed as well. A man, apparently The Rock's coach, is also watching the fight, and he is pleased with the outcome. Jay's father observes that something might be dangerous, and hopes Coach Typhoon understands too. Jay's coach, in turn, observes Jay and concludes that he is performing better than in practice matches. His concern about facing a stronger opponent no longer bothers him. He also concludes that if Jay keeps this up, he could indeed win the fight. Another round of the fight ends. The coach tells Jay that he did well in the second round, but advises him not to get too excited and to maintain his rhythm. The score difference is now clear, so the opponent will try to land a decisive blow. Finally, he tells Jay to be cautious about this. The boy, panting, listens to the instructions carefully. His coach wonders why he seems so tired, as he prepared him well for speed-based matches, and it's only the second round. But then he pauses for a moment, and notices Jay's opponent. The Rock is exuding energy and doesn't seem tired at all. Jay's father observes that his opponent was slow because he's an outboxer, and explosive movements are not enough to tire an opponent like that. There is also the pressure in the fight. Psychological factors will also make a boxer feel exhausted. The fight between in-fighters is an aggressive clash of hooks and crosses thrown non-stop. Each punch shakes the boxer's composure. Without realizing it, the fighter becomes more rigid, expending more energy with each move. The pressure in a real match is different from a practice session with protective gear. And on top of that, this is Jay's debut match. He's just a novice, and of course, he doesn't have the experience to handle the pressure. His opponent is an experienced veteran in-fighter and has used that knowledge to his advantage, landing punches here and there that pressure Jay. The coach understands the opponent's strategy and concludes that even though it seems like Jay is on top, he has actually been in control the whole time. This is bad. He should have played defensively and tried to last until the end of the round by avoiding the fight, the coach questions. But then he recognizes that this isn't the best approach and says that The Rock's specialty is precisely to target boxers who try to run away. This leaves the coach with only one option: to believe in his athlete. He needs to trust in the hard work Jay has put in. The coach tells Jay that they have only 2 rounds left, and the boy just needs to keep doing what he's been doing and stay focused. "Yes, sir," the boy responds. "Good, now go," says the coach. The third round is about to start. The Rock glares at him fiercely, and Jay, though tired, meets his gaze with intense focus. The referee allows the match to resume. This time, The Rock comes in more aggressively. Jay notices that the opponent feels heavier than in the previous rounds. This makes him realize that Rock has been pacing himself and saving his strength, making it no longer possible to win face-to-face. So all that's left is speed. But Jay's body feels heavy, and the opponent continues to close the gap. Jay tries to attack, but is already quite exhausted. His coach notices that he has significantly slowed down. Now he's against the ropes and can't escape. Jay's legs are stiff. The Rock is hitting hard and fast, so Jay needs to stay focused and stay on his feet. While he keeps his guard up, the opponent continues to hit him. But a precise punch from the opponent lands on him. Jay remains with his guard up, protecting his face. But that's all he can do, as his opponent keeps attacking relentlessly. The boy tries to counterattack, but he's cornered against the ropes, making his movements difficult. His coach realizes that The Rock wants to finish it in this round. The power of his punches is incredible. Jay's whole body aches from the constant pounding. The Rock lands a right hook. Jay, unable to block it, continues to be pushed backward and needs to get off the ropes if he wants to react. Soon after, the opponent feints and delivers a left hook, anticipating his movements. Jay watches his movements closely and manages to dodge the attack. The dodge impresses his coach. Even his opponent is surprised by the evasion, but he thinks the boy is no match for him and charges towards him. Jay notices he's trying something different, so he blocks a punch from the opponent, but then he takes another hit with his guard down. The boy feels a lot of pain from this. The Rock doesn't let up and continues to attack, pressing Jay against the ropes. His father is shocked by the scene. His coach is also growing desperate. Jay's chances of winning this fight are dwindling. His opponent is extremely focused on the fight, and Jay loses his strength, dropping to one knee in the ring. The referee announces his fall, and then starts the count. On the ground, Jay concludes that his opponent is very strong. He thought he could come out on top, but The Rock only had to land a few punches to turn the game. The difference in experience between the two is immense. Yet Jay prepares to get back into the fight and says he has something left up his sleeve. Before the count finishes, he gets up, leaving his opponent very impressed. The Rock notices that Jay minimizes the damage by reflexively putting his hand between his fist and his face. His reaction speed is commendable. This is definitely the move of someone facing a stronger opponent. Jay is ready again and has his guard up. The fight resumes, and The Rock says he really likes the rookie. He mentions that he was saving his best move for the champion. And as he looks at Jay in front of him, he concludes that out of respect for him, he will use his trick in this match. Jay's father is very worried about him, and even though this has been a good match, landing direct punches is almost an obsession for his opponent, and if he sees an opening, he will try to throw a direct punch. So Jay remembers that he was instructed to practice intensively against this, and learn to dodge his opponent's attacks. The Rock didn't expect the boy to recover from this, but after dodging The Rock's direct punch, Jay prepares to punch him in the ribs. However, the opponent lands a counterattack at the last second, which impresses Jay's coach. Even his father didn't expect this. The Rock shows he's well prepared for the fight. Jay, on the other hand, was caught off guard. His punch was blocked by the opponent. Not only did he defend Jay's punch, but he also landed another one on him. The boy realizes that the opponent deliberately threw a straight punch. He anticipated Jay's movements, and when Jay's guard was down, The Rock hit him up close, throwing him to the ground. Everyone on Jay's team is shocked by this counterattack. His opponent simply turns around with an air of someone who has already won. The referee announces a fall in the match. On the ground, Jay thinks it's all over. His opponent is better than him in strength, skill, stamina, and experience, making Jay feel like he's no match for him at all. Nothing he prepared has worked, and he has nothing left to do. The count is already halfway through. What determines a person's worth? The Rock thinks it has been a long time since he had a real good match and thanks the rookie, telling him to rise from the ashes of his defeat, because that way he will surely become stronger. He also says he will eagerly await the day they meet again. The winner and the loser. In this world of winners and losers, people respect the strongest who rise to the top and generously praise them. Because we all crave value, we feverishly yearn for distinction. And can we say it's only the few selected whose existence carries any value? No. Then there's movement in the arena, and Jay's coach sighs. His father feels relieved once again, and The Rock becomes enraged. Jay stands up and says it doesn't matter if he has talent or not, or if he wins or loses. No one cares about that, he says. And with a grim look, he asks who does care. What determines a person's worth? Jay, with his face covered in blood, faces the referee. He thinks that 2 falls in a row will be just a one-sided beating if he lets the match continue. He also says it should have been stopped as a technical knockout by now, but the rookie intrigues him, and he asks if Jay can continue. The boy replies that he can. His eyes are clear and focused. This makes it clear to the referee that even though he has suffered damage, Jay seems more focused than at the start of the match. He assures Jay that he will be watching him more closely. He tells the boy that if he is knocked down again in this round or seems to be in danger, he will stop the match immediately, and Jay should keep that in mind. After Jay agrees, the referee restarts the fight. There's a fine line between stubbornness and tenacity. The Rock thinks this way, and says he wants to see which one the boy is, pressuring him again against the ropes. The coach notices that once again the opponent has pressed Jay from the start. He holds the towel, ready to throw it in at any moment. Jay is using all of his strength to defend himself. But his opponent is relentless, landing punches from various directions. This makes the referee watch the fight more closely. Amid the punches, Jay seems aware that he could be one of those boxers who lose their professional debut and quietly disappear. Then he continues to defend himself from the opponent. His coach watches him intently, and so does the referee. Jay returns to his reflection and thinks he might be one of those who disappear without winning a single match after debuting, but this doesn't faze him. He says he didn't start boxing to find out if he's stronger or weaker than others. This motivates him to keep fighting and retaliate against the opponent's attacks. The opponent in turn is surprised by Jay's renewed stance. Jay simply says he started boxing to discover what true strength is. His opponent is taking hits this time, but he counters, though Jay doesn't back down. He thinks that whether he wins or loses, he will have given his all. Even with his face covered in blood, the boy says that's enough. landing a punch in succession. His opponent takes a step back and wonders if Jay still had all that strength left. Jay's coach is surprised by what he has done. Jay realizes that his punch pushed his opponent back for the first time, but he finds himself at his limit now. His legs no longer moving. The Rock stares at him and approaches. So all that's left for Jay now is to move forward. Jay glares at him fiercely. The Rock, impressed, says that the boy is the best rookie he has faced. His father watches from afar and wishes him luck. An intense exchange of punches begins. The two try to hit each other. Jay's coach watches from outside the ring. He sees how the boy fights. Being honest with himself, he says that this was the match that challenged common sense. It's rare for a rookie to face a fighter of this level in their debut, and it's the kind of matchup reserved for former Olympic medalists or those who made their names on the streets. A confrontation the coach thinks he should have turned down. However, he saw potential in Jay. Maybe he made a hasty decision, but his instinct told him to accept the match. Watching the fight, he wishes the boy would show him why he'd accepted this bout. Jay, on his part, notices the incredible strength of his opponent. He says he should be exhausted, but his punches are even more powerful than before. The Rock doesn't stop attacking at any moment. Jay is thrown against the ropes again. He observes that the opponent used his signature right hand, and compared to Steele's, it's much stronger. Yes, that's the Rock's right hand, and it's a skill he has honed throughout his career. There's no fancy trick to it. It's just an extended, direct punch, making it his favorite boxing technique. Jay is even more impressed with his opponent. He says it's obvious how much extreme hard work went into perfecting his boxing style. Every move shows the blood, sweat, and tears he has dedicated. This is the life he chose, different from Jay's life. There are two people meeting in the ring for the first time, each with their own stories, about the lives they led and who they are. Whether you win or lose, it's just a result. Jay concludes that boxing is really cool, and prepares as his opponent comes towards him. The second punch from the Rock. This isn't a feint, it's coming straight at Jay. He tries to move because he needs to dodge, but his body won't listen. His limit has now been reached, but he's not ready to give up, and thinks he just needs to move one more time. The Rock attacks and he manages to dodge, realizing he has successfully evaded. He thinks he now needs to move to the left side where he was hit, but his own body doesn't obey. This makes him think that if he had trained more, he could handle it. The opponent notices Jay's excitement and tries to hit him. Jay thinks this is as far as he can go. It was a good match, and he gave it his all. But just as he was about to give up, a memory surfaces and motivates him. Quickly, Jay dodges the opponent's attack. Then he dodges another attack swiftly. This leaves his coach completely surprised. His father also can't believe what he's seeing. Even his opponent is astonished by this turnaround. Jay, in turn, is determined to continue. And after dodging, he prepares to counterattack. In quick succession, he lands a hook to the opponent's chin. The Rock feels it immediately. Jay wastes no time and lands another punch to his face. The audience falls silent for a brief moment, and the referee announces a fall. He looks at the Rock on the ring floor, then signals his hands up. Still in shock, Jay doesn't know how to react. It seems even he doesn't fully understand what he's done. Elsewhere, we see a bird lying on the ground. A man with white hair appears. In court, the judge says that according to Article 258.2 of the Criminal Code, the accused, Baeksun Ryu, is sentenced to 6 years in prison. We see the bird again, and it is injured in one of its wings. Ryu shows no reaction to his sentence. The judge bangs the gavel, confirming the sentence. Back at the fight, we see Jay still in the ring. The referee holds his right arm and raises it, crowning the boy as the champion. Jay still can't believe he won. Steele goes up to him, asking how he managed that move at the end. The coach says he can't believe how he won, and confirms that his feelings were right, as he knew deep down that this would be the result. The boy's father, still in the stands, looks at Jay with a smile on his face. His opponent gets up from the ring and says he didn't expect his trump card to be destroyed like that. Jay's rational weaving speed and the movement leading to the punch in the ribs at the end were really something. It was a fleeting moment, but Rock saw movements that make the opponent worth competing on the world stage. Steele congratulates him and says he hopes he's not a sore loser. Rock simply says he's different in that sense. Then he tells Jay that it's been a while since he had so much fun, and he looks forward to seeing the boy grow. Jay is surprised by these words, and thanks the opponent for the consideration. He's still a bit green, says Rock, but with the spirit and great courage he showed during the match. His physical strength built on obvious hard work, excellent reaction speed, and the potential he displayed at the end. He will definitely become great. He can just keep winning and challenge the champion in no time. But he should be careful. And Rock thinks about that, concluding that the champion is a dangerous guy. Back home after the fight, Jay thinks he'll go to sleep as soon as possible, but once he lies down, he can't fall asleep. He still feels like he's in the ring, as the moment is still fresh in his mind. Jay stares at the ceiling continuously, thinking it feels like the opponent is still in front of him, as if he needs to react to one of his punches. Just recalling this sends a chill down his spine. Finally, his dream seems to be real, becoming a professional boxer. His eyes shine and he remembers the past. All the moments he trained to get to the fight, the punch he landed on his opponent, and the moment he realized his victory. It seems like he's finally come to terms with having defeated the Rock. This makes him very happy. With all the joy, he twists in bed celebrating his long-dreamed victory. It's the first time he feels this way. But for a brief moment, when he thought it was all over, the only reason he managed to dodge that punch. Before he could finish, Jay's eyes widen, and he freezes for a moment. At night, under the light of the moon and stars, he trains again on his terrace, saying he'll repeat that moment for his fight and try again. His eyes are fixed and concentrated on the target. In front of him is the silhouette of a past he thought he'd forgotten but now materializes to motivate him. Jay sees his imaginary opponent attacking him constantly. With that, he dodges and moves faster and faster. Just like in his previous fight, the opponent prepares to attack him, and Jay anticipates his moves, dodging the opponent's punch and already predicting that the next one is coming right after, remembering he needs to dodge it. However, he takes an imaginary punch and snaps back to reality in shock. This makes him conclude that the result of his fight was just luck. Jay thinks that even if he dodges one punch and the next, they would only come flying at him. Unlike other boxers, he can't read his opponent's movements in time. The boy heard about a boxer who left the sport, but has a feeling he will meet him in the ring someday. With that, he resumes training. The moonlight illuminates him, and now Jay finally seems to feel sleepy. So he decides to stop and says he's overdone it, especially after the match he had. He walks to the bed saying he'll go to sleep now, but he stops on his way, thinking that now that he's also a professional boxer, maybe he can face you, at least in his imagination. He then prepares to fight once more, and assumes a defensive stance protecting his face. He positions his feet on the ground, but takes an imaginary punch from the opponent. After that, he stands still for a moment thinking about it, and concludes that he'll just take a shower and go to sleep. Then he runs back inside the house. Elsewhere, we see Yudo Takeda also training. He looks very motivated. In front of him, he imagines fighting you. His feet move side to side. This makes him dodge an imaginary punch. Then he evades the opponent and goes on the attack, landing a solid hit on the imaginary adversary. The moonlight also illuminates his workout, but someone interrupts him and just tells him to go again. Takeda simply replies, yes, and hears that he should repeat the exercise 100 more times. At another moment, we see Peter in his office drinking coffee. After the shocking end of the last fight between Yu and Jean for the lightweight title, Kei, in a press conference, threw down the challenge to the next opponent. As expected, he says he's not satisfied with how the match ended, but he's happy with how he fought. The coach says he's sure others were waiting as eagerly as he was, but his goal is the junior middleweight title. Peter was expecting something like this from him. He continues, saying that if he had followed his own path, they would have challenged the champion right away, but first they need to prove that Yu is qualified to try for the title. He then says his next target is the current top fighter in the division, Elliot von Heimberg, and mentions that Yu will crush him first. After that, he'll go after the champion of the category, Yudo Takeda, and he tells Takeda to enjoy the belt while he still has it, because he won't have it for long. So take good care of it for us, says Kei. Meanwhile, Yudo Takeda watches on TV everything the coach said to him, and says he and his team are looking forward to the match. Our video ends here. To ensure you don't miss the next part, activate the notification bell, and see you next time on Tob's channel.